Hey everyone. Welcome back for the second part of The Yellow Flash and His Son. As always, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, especially with all the restrictions YouTube places on my type of content. As always, the full story is already out over there for you guys along with about 50 other different stories you can enjoy. Also, feel free to send me any messages over there if you have any questions or even if you just want to chat. Link to all of that will be in the description. Anyways, everyone, enjoy the video. Chapter 4. The land of rain was a nation perpetually weeping. A constant, dreary drizzle fell from a gray, oppressive sky, turning the landscape into a maze of slick, dark rooftops and rust-colored steel towers that pierced the heavens like the ribs of some long-dead beast. The air was heavy with the smell of wet metal and the hum of industry. This was Amigakure, a nation that had walled itself off from the world, nursing the scars of past wars in solitude. Naruto, traveling as an official envoy, was met at the border by a squad of rain shinobi. Their faces were hidden by rebreather masks, their eyes cold and suspicious. They led him in silence through the towering, labyrinthine city to the highest spire, the seat of their leader. He was brought before Hanzo of the Salamander. The legendary shinobi was older than Naruto had expected, his face a roadmap of countless battles, his body scarred and weary. He sat on a simple steel throne, his famous respirator covering the lower half of his face, his eyes sharp and filled with a deep, profound cynicism. The son of Minato Namikaze, Hanzo's voice was a metallic rasp, filtered through his mask. You have your father's face, but you carry the scent of something far older. The Kyuubi. I have fought tailed beasts. I have fought your Sannin. I have fought the world. And I have learned one truth: peace is an illusion. With respect, Hanzo-sama, Naruto replied, his voice calm and steady, peace isn't an illusion. It's a choice. And it's a choice we have to keep making, every single day. Words, Hanzo scoffed. Your father sends a child to speak of peace while his village amasses power that threatens to swallow the world. You have allied with the mist. You have eliminated Orochimaru. You project your strength, and you call it peace. I call it domination. I call it security, Naruto countered. My father, our village. We know what it's like to be attacked, to lose everything. The power we have is a shield, not a sword. We use it to protect our home, and to help our allies protect theirs. We ended the civil war in the mist because a tyrant was bleeding his own people dry. We eliminated Orochimaru because he was a cancer that threatened everyone. Is that not a just cause? He took a step forward, his gaze unwavering. I am a Jinchuriki. I know what it is to be feared, to be seen as a monster, a weapon. I also know that what is inside me does not have to define me. It is the same for our villages. Our pasts are filled with war and hatred. But we, the new generation, have the chance to choose a different path. My father wants to build a coalition based on mutual trust, not fear. He sent me, alone, as a sign of that trust. He is inviting you to a summit in Konoha to begin a new dialogue. Hanzo was silent for a long time, studying the 14-year-old boy before him. He saw no deception in Naruto's eyes, no hidden agenda. He saw only a powerful, earnest conviction that was so pure it was almost naive. It was a conviction he himself had lost long ago. Before he could give his answer, the doors to the throne room burst open. A rain shinobi rushed in, his face pale with panic. Hanzo-sama. An urgent message from our listening posts on the Iwa border, he gasped. The Tsuchikage and the Reikage have just issued a joint declaration. They have formalized their alliance. Citing Konoha's pattern of aggressive expansion and diplomatic encirclement, they have officially declared war on the land of fire and the land of water. The words hung in the air, heavy and cold as the rain outside. Naruto's blood ran cold. His mission, his father's gambit for peace, had failed. He had been the final trigger. Hanzo looked from the frantic messenger to the stunned Konoha envoy. He saw the shock and horror on Naruto's face, and in that moment, he knew the boy's words had been true. This was not Konoha's plan. This was the desperate act of two paranoid old men who feared a changing world. The legendary leader of the rain slowly stood up from his throne. He looked at Naruto, and for the first time, a flicker of something other than cynicism appeared in his eyes. It was respect. It seems your father's fears were well-founded, Hanzo said, his voice a low growl. The old fools have chosen their path. And so, I must choose mine. He turned to his subordinate. Send a message to all Amigakure forces. We are mobilizing. And send a missive to the Hokage. He looked directly at Naruto. Tell Minato Namikaze that the hidden rain village stands with Konoha. The world has chosen war. Let us show them what it means to fight for peace. Naruto bowed deeply, his mind reeling. He had secured a powerful new ally, but it was too late. The Fourth Great Ninja War had begun. His diplomatic mission was over. Now, he had to race home, back to his father, back to his team, back to a village that was now a target. The time for words was over. The time for fighting had come. Naruto didn't wait for a formal dismissal. With a curt, respectful bow to Hanzo, he turned and vanished, a golden flicker against the perpetual gray of the Rain Village. His diplomatic mission was over, his duty as a shinobi of the leaf had begun. The journey back was a frantic, desperate race against time. He pushed his body to its limits, the world a blur of green and brown around him. But even at his incredible speed, he could feel the change. The very chakra of the world felt different, charged with tension and malice. He sensed massive troop movements along the borders, the frantic energy of nations preparing for bloodshed. The world was mobilizing for a war of a scale not seen in generations. He arrived at the gates of Konoha to a village transformed. The usual bustling peace was gone, replaced by the disciplined, organized chaos of a nation preparing for total war. The air thrummed with the sound of marching feet and shouted commands. The Uchiha police force patrolled the streets, their Sharingan eyes keeping a vigilant watch, maintaining order as civilians were directed to reinforced shelters. The Hyuga clan had established a defensive perimeter around the village, their Byakugan a near impenetrable web of surveillance. Every able-bodied shinobi, from fresh-faced Chunin to legendary veterans, was armed and assembled, their faces grim but resolute. Naruto didn't stop. He blazed through the streets, a streak of gold heading directly for the Hokage Tower. He burst into the war room, a chamber he had never entered before. It was a cavernous space dominated by a massive, illuminated map of the continent. His father stood at its center, no longer the warm parent but the fourth Hokage, a commander-in-chief surrounded by the entirety of Konoha's leadership, Shikaku Nara, Inoiki Yamanaka, Choza Akimichi, Hiashi Hyuga, Fugaku Uchiha, and the Sannin Jiraiya. Naruto. Minato's voice was sharp. Report. Hanzo has declared his allegiance, Naruto said, his voice clear and strong despite his exhaustion. Amigakure stands with Konoha. A wave of relief washed through the room. Shikaku Nara let out a long breath. The rain's support creates a buffer state and splits Iwa's attention. This is a critical strategic advantage. Troublesome, but a good start. It is not enough, Minato said, his gaze fixed on the map. We are still facing the combined might of the two most powerful military nations on the continent. They will attack on two fronts. He pointed to the border with the land of grass. Iwa will push through here, a slow, grinding assault designed to drain our resources. The Tsuchikage is patient. He will try to bleed us. His finger then moved to the border with the land of frost. Kumo will be the true threat. The Raikage will lead a lightning assault, a blitzkrieg designed to shatter our defenses and break our morale before we can fully mobilize. This is where the war will be won or lost. He turned, his gaze sweeping over his commanders, his brothers in arms, and finally, his son. This will be a war fought by our entire village, Minato declared, his voice ringing with the authority of a cage. Jiraiya, you will lead the defense against Iwagakure. Use your network, your summons, and your experience to bog them down in a war of attrition they cannot win. Jiraiya grinned, cracking his knuckles. Leave the old rock heads to me. Minato then looked at Naruto, and every person in the room turned with him. Naruto. You will take command of the 3rd and 4th battalions. You will lead them to the northern front to meet the Raikage's assault head-on. A stunned silence fell over the war room. He was placing his 14-year-old son in command of nearly half of their active forces on the most critical front of the war. Minato, are you certain? Fugaku Uchiha asked, his voice tight with concern. He is young. He is our second Flash, Minato stated, his voice unwavering, filled with an absolute, unshakable faith. He is the hero who subdued the One-Tails, the leader who brought down the Bloody Mist, the shinobi who outwitted Orochimaru. The Raikage prides himself on his ultimate speed. We will meet his speed with our own. We will show them that the age of the Leaf's lightning has not passed. He looked at his son, not as a father, but as a cage giving his most important command. Your command will include Itachi, Shisui, and your own Team 7. Your mission is to halt the Kumo invasion, protect our northern border, and, if the opportunity arises, face the Raikage himself. The fate of this war rests on your front. Do not fail. Naruto looked at the map, at the arrows indicating the massive Kumo invasion force. He felt the immense weight of thousands of lives, the future of his village, settling onto his shoulders. He felt no fear. Only a cold, burning resolve. He straightened up, his blue eyes as hard and clear as ice. Yes, Hokage-sama. The fourth great ninja war had begun, and Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the second flash of the leaf, was marching to meet it. The march of the 3rd and 4th battalions was a sight to behold. Thousands of Konoha shinobi moved as one, a river of green and steel flowing north towards the land of frost. At its head was not a grizzled veteran or a famed clan leader, but a 14-year-old boy in a jonin vest, his golden hair a stark banner against the green canopy. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, commander of the Northern Front, was a picture of calm authority. He moved with a purpose that inspired confidence in the troops who followed him. At his side were his lieutenants, Itachi Uchiha, the stoic genius whose Sharingan seemed to see every possibility, Shisui Uchiha, the cheerful phantom whose speed was a legend in itself, and his own Team 7, Sasuke and Sakura, now Chunin, their faces set with the grim determination of shinobi marching to war. "Commander," Itachi said, falling into step beside Naruto. "The Yamanaka clan has established a psychic link with our forward scouts. Kumo's main force is 10 miles ahead. 10,000 strong, led by Daru of the Black Lightning. They're moving slower than anticipated," Naruto noted. "They want us to engage them here, in this terrain." "It's a feint." "My thoughts exactly," Itachi agreed. "They're pinning our main force while a secondary unit strikes elsewhere." Back in Konoha's war room, the same conclusion was being reached. Shikaku Nara stared at the massive map, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's too obvious, Minato. The Raikage is arrogant, but he's not a fool. This frontal assault is a distraction." "Inoiki, what are our sensory units picking up?" Minato asked, his voice tight. "Nothing, Hokage-sama," Inoiki Yamanaka replied, his eyes closed. "The Kumo forces are masking their chakra with some kind of wide-scale suppression jutsu. But there are gaps. Faint whispers. It's a strategy designed to make us think we have the whole picture." It was then that a frantic message came through. A small garrison, guarding the critical Kaku Pass, the main supply route for the entire northern front, was under attack. They were outnumbered 10 to 1. An army of 2,000 Kumo shinobi had used a secret, ancient route through the mountains, bypassing Konoha's main defenses completely. "The trap," Shikaku breathed, his face pale. "If that pass falls, Naruto's entire army will be cut off, without supplies. They'll be slaughtered." The commander of the Kaku Pass garrison was a veteran named Gaku. He stood on a makeshift barricade, watching the sea of Kumo shinobi preparing for their final assault. His forces were down to less than 200. Among them, fighting with a ferocity that defied their age, were Sasuke and Sakura. They had been assigned to the garrison as part of their first official Chunin deployment. "Fire style, Great Dragon Fire Jutsu," Sasuke roared, unleashing a massive dragon of flame that crashed into the Kumo ranks, buying them a few precious seconds. He was panting, his chakra reserves dangerously low. "Sasuke, on your left," Sakura yelled, her hands glowing with green chakra as she healed a deep gash on a fallen comrade's leg. She had saved dozens of lives, but for every shinobi she healed, 2 more were injured. They were being systematically overwhelmed. Despair was beginning to set in. "This is it," Sasuke muttered, watching the enemy reform. "We're not getting out of this." For all his power, for all his training, he was just one shinobi against an army. The sheer numbers were an insurmountable wall. In the war room, Minato's face was grim. "Gaku's garrison cannot hold. My main force is too far to reinforce them in time." He looked at the map, his eyes tracing the distance between Naruto's position and the Kaku Pass. "There is only one option." He turned to Inoiki. "Get me a line to my son. Now." On the northern front, Naruto was directing his forces, preparing to engage Daru's army. Suddenly, he froze. "Commander Naruto," Inoiki's voice echoed directly in his mind. "The Hokage has a direct order for you. The Kaku Pass is falling. The enemy has set a trap. You are the only one who can get there in time." Naruto's eyes widened. Sasuke and Sakura were at that pass. "Itachi, you have command," Naruto said, his voice suddenly cold as ice. "Engage the enemy, but do not commit to a full assault. This is a holding action." "Naruto, where are you going?" Shisui asked. Naruto didn't answer. He simply vanished. Back at the Kaku Pass, the final Kumo assault had begun. The 200 Leaf Shinobi were being pushed back, their line about to break. Sasuke and Sakura stood back to back, surrounded, kunai in hand, ready to fight to their last breath. And then, it happened. A single, 3-pronged kunai spun through the air, landing silently in the dirt between the two armies. For a moment, nothing happened. A Kumo shinobi laughed. "What's this? Are they throwing their garbage at us now?" And then, A flash of gold. Naruto appeared beside the kunai, his back to his beleaguered comrades, facing the army of 2,000 alone. He wasn't wearing his jonin vest. He was wearing his father's signature white and red coat, the kanji for second flash emblazoned on the back. All of you, Naruto said, his voice calm but carrying across the entire battlefield. Get out of my country. The Kumo commander sneered. One man? Kill him. The front line of 500 shinobi charged. Naruto reached into his pouch and threw 100 of his Hiraishin kunai, scattering them across the entire battlefield in a single, fluid motion. And then he began to dance. It was a massacre set to a symphony of golden flashes. He appeared by a kunai on the enemy's left flank, a Rasengan obliterating a dozen men. Before their bodies hit the ground, he flashed to a kunai in their center, a blade of wind decapitating their squad leader. He flashed behind their lines, then back to the front, then into the air, a phantom reaper moving faster than the eye could see, faster than the Sharingan could track. Sasuke could only stare, his jaw slack, his mind unable to process what he was seeing. This wasn't the taijutsu of his sensei. This wasn't the Rasengan he had seen before. This was a god of the battlefield, moving at the speed of thought, delivering death with an impossible, untouchable grace. The gap between them wasn't a gap. It was a chasm. It was the space between the earth and the sky. His rivalry, his anger, his pride, it all dissolved into a profound, humbling, and reverent awe. The Kumo army broke. Their charge turned into a rout. They were not fighting a man, they were fighting a legend reborn. They fled in terror, but there was no escape. A flash of gold would appear before them, and their lives would end. In less than 10 minutes, it was over. Naruto stood alone in a field of the fallen, not a single drop of blood on his father's coat. The 2,000 Kumo shinobi were gone. The 200 Konoha shinobi stared in stunned, absolute silence. He turned to look at them, at his students, his comrades. He had kept his greatest secret, his father's greatest jutsu, hidden for years. Today, he had unleashed it upon the world. The fourth great ninja war had its first true legend. The second flash of the leaf had arrived. The silence that followed the massacre was more profound than any sound. The 200 surviving Konoha shinobi stood frozen, not in fear, but in a state of sheer, reverent disbelief. They had been moments from annihilation, staring into the abyss of their own deaths, only to be saved by a golden whirlwind that had erased an entire army. Naruto stood amidst the fallen, the wind gently flapping the coat on his back. He took a deep, steadying breath, the adrenaline slowly beginning to recede, leaving behind the bone-deep weariness of having performed thousands of precise, lethal actions in mere minutes. He looked down at his hands. They were clean, but he could feel the phantom weight of the lives he had just extinguished. This was the power his father had wielded. The power to end a battle before it truly began. The power that made the world tremble. It was a terrifying, lonely burden. He turned and walked back towards the barricade. The crowd of shinobi parted before him like the sea, their eyes filled with an awe so complete it bordered on worship. He found his students. Sakura was on her knees, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Sasuke was leaning against the barricade, his entire body trembling slightly. The Sharingan was still active in his eyes, but it wasn't looking at anything. It was replaying the impossible, trying to comprehend a level of speed and power that defied all logic. Sakura, Naruto's voice was quiet, but it cut through her shock like a kunai. Report. How many wounded? Sakura snapped to attention, her medic nin training taking over. S17 critical. 42 moderate. Sensei. You. 10 to the critical first, Naruto ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. Sasuke. Sasuke looked up, his eyes finally meeting Naruto's. The fiery rivalry, the anger, the pride, it was all gone, burned away by the golden light he had just witnessed. In its place was a deep, humbling respect. He wasn't looking at a rival anymore. He was looking at his sensei. At a legend. Set up a defensive perimeter, Naruto commanded. The pass is secure, but we don't know if they have other units in the area. I want sensory traps laid every 100 meters. Get it done. Sasuke just nodded, his voice failing him. He turned and began barking orders at the other Chunin, his movements sharp and efficient. He had a mission. He had a commander. It was a clarity he hadn't realized he'd been missing. As his team went to work, Naruto sank to one knee, the exhaustion hitting him all at once. He had done it. He had saved them. But the cost. He looked out at the silent battlefield, and for the first time, he truly understood the weight of the coat he wore. The news traveled across the continent with the speed of a psychic scream. In the Kumo war tent, the fourth Raikage, A, was listening to Daru's report on the stalemate with Itachi's forces. Suddenly, a lone shinobi, his face a mask of pure terror, his clothes torn and bloody, stumbled into the tent and collapsed. The Kaku Pass. The survivor stammered, his eyes wild. It's gone. They're all gone. What are you talking about? The Raikage demanded, grabbing the man by his flak jacket. Report. Did the garrison fall? No. A flash of gold. The man sobbed. It was the yellow flash. He was there. He killed them all. All 2,000 of them. He was everywhere. The Raikage froze, his hand tightening. The name echoed in his mind, a ghost from a past war, a name that still haunted his nightmares. The only man he had never been able to outspeed. Minato. He growled. No, Raikage-sama, the survivor whispered, his voice filled with an almost religious terror. It wasn't him. It was his son. Slammed his fist onto the war table, shattering the solid oak into splinters. The fury on his face was terrible to behold. It wasn't just anger. It was the rage of a man who realized the monster he had feared had not just returned, but had sired an heir. In Iwagakure, that Tsuchikage, Anaki, received the report via a stone messenger. He read the scroll, and his ancient face, usually contorted with arrogance, went slack with a deep, weary dread. 2 of them, he said to his commanders. There are 2 of them now. He had fought Minato Namikaze. He knew what that speed meant. It was a force that broke armies, that shattered morale, that rendered strategy irrelevant. This changes everything. All plans are to be reassessed. We are no longer fighting a war against Konoha. We are fighting a war against a force of nature. Back in Konoha's war room, the psychic link from the Kaku Pass garrison had reported the impossible victory. The room was silent, the weight of the news settling upon them. Shikaku Nara sank into his chair. 2,000. In 3 minutes. Troublesome doesn't even begin to cover it. Minato stood before the map, his back to the room. He felt a surge of immense pride, so powerful it almost brought him to his knees. But it was followed by a wave of profound sorrow. He had known this day would come. The day he would have to unleash his son upon the world, not as a hero, but as a weapon of absolute power. He had protected Naruto from the shadows of the village, only to thrust him into the inferno of war. Jiraiya placed a heavy hand on his student's shoulder. He did what he had to do, Minato. He saved them all. I know, Minato whispered, his voice thick with the burden of command. But the world will never look at him the same way again. He was right. By the time the sun set, the story had become a legend. From the front lines to the halls of the daimyo, the message was clear. The yellow flash was not just a memory. It was a legacy. A title that had been passed from father to son. The Fourth Great Ninja War had a new name, whispered in fear by its enemies and in hope by its allies, the War of the Two Flashes. The aftermath at Kaku Pass was a grim, quiet affair. Under Naruto's command, the surviving Konoha shinobi worked with a newfound, solemn purpose. The wounded were triaged by Sakura and her makeshift medic team with an efficiency born of desperation. The dead were collected, their dog tags catalogued for the families waiting back home. Sasuke, his pride replaced by a stark, focused clarity, directed the Chunin in reinforcing their defenses, his Sharingan tirelessly scanning the perimeter for any sign of a counterattack. Naruto stood on the highest point of the pass, a solitary figure in his father's coat, watching the sun set. The weight of his actions pressed down on him. It wasn't guilt. It was responsibility. He had made a choice, and the world had shifted on its axis because of it. He had saved 200 lives by taking 2,000. It was the cold, brutal arithmetic of war, a lesson he was learning far too young. Sensei. He turned to see Sasuke and Sakura standing behind him. Their expressions were no longer ones of shock, but of quiet contemplation. The wounded are stabilized, Sakura reported. We lost 12 more from their injuries before I could get to them. But everyone else will make it. The perimeter is secure, Sasuke added. We have sensory seals placed every 50 meters in a 5-mile radius. Nothing will get close without us knowing. Naruto nodded, his gaze returning to the horizon. Good work. Both of you. There was a long silence, filled only by the wind whistling through the pass. How? Sasuke finally asked, the question he had been wrestling with for hours. How did you do that? That speed. It wasn't just speed. It was something else. Naruto looked at his student, at the Uchiha prodigy who had always seen him as a rival to be surpassed. He saw the genuine, humbling desire for knowledge in Sasuke's eyes. It's my father's jutsu, Naruto said simply. The Hiraishin no jutsu. The flying thunder god technique. It's not about moving fast. It's about not having to move at all. He pulled out one of his three-pronged kunai, letting Sasuke see the complex seal formula etched into the metal. These are the keys. Where they are, I can be. Instantly. The explanation was simple, yet the implications were staggering. It was space-time ninjutsu, a legendary art thought left only with the fourth Hokage. You are the only other person who can use it, Sasuke stated, a note of awe in his voice. Yes, Naruto confirmed. And now the whole world knows it. As if on cue, a shadow flickered beside them. It was Itachi. His face was grim. Naruto, he said, his voice urgent. I just received a priority message from the Hokage's intelligence network. The Raikage is on the move. What? Naruto stood up, instantly alert. After the news from this pass reached him, he abandoned his position opposite my forces, Itachi explained. He's moving with a small, elite bodyguard unit. He's not attacking the main army. He's coming here. For you. Shisui appeared a moment later, his expression equally serious. It's a direct challenge, Naruto. The Raikage is a man of immense pride. You've humiliated his army and taken on your father's legacy. He sees this as a personal insult. He's coming to prove that his speed is still the greatest in the world. The strategic situation was clear. The Raikage was abandoning a major front to engage in a personal duel. It was an act of pure, arrogant fury. This is my fight, Naruto said, his voice hardening. Itachi, Shisui, your place is with the main army. Daru is still a threat. You cannot abandon that front. We will not leave you to face a cage alone, Itachi protested. I won't be alone, Naruto said, looking at his two students. I have my team. He then looked back at Itachi, and for the first time, he gave his captain a direct order. That is my decision as commander of this front. Secure the pass, then return to the main force. I will handle the Raikage. Itachi stared at his young friend, his student, and now his commander. He saw the unwavering resolve in Naruto's eyes, the same fire he saw in Minato. He gave a sharp, respectful nod. Understood. Commander. With a final, worried glance from Shisui, the two Uchiha prodigies vanished, leaving Naruto alone with his team. Sensei, you can't be serious, Sakura exclaimed. The Raikage is. He's one of the most powerful shinobi alive. Sakura and Sasuke stared at their sensei, their minds struggling to grasp the sheer audacity of his statement. Face the Raikage? The living embodiment of speed and power? With a team of two fresh Chunin? It wasn't bravery, it was suicide. He is, Naruto agreed, his voice cutting through their fear with calm certainty. Which is why this is the perfect opportunity. He looked at the sky, a complex battle plan already forming in his mind, 1,000 branching possibilities analyzed and discarded in the span of a heartbeat. He's coming here expecting a duel. A one-on-one battle of speed to satisfy his pride. He won't get one. He turned to his students, a fierce, determined glint in his eye. He'll get Team 7. And we are going to show him the difference between a charging bull and a team of hunters. He knelt in the dirt, quickly sketching a map of the canyon. This is no longer a defensive position. It is a trap. Our trap. He looked at Sasuke. The Raikage's greatest weapon is his lightning release chakra mode. It gives him an absolute defense and godlike speed. Your Chidori is a focused thrust of lightning chakra. It is the only thing in our arsenal that can pierce his armor. You are the tip of our spear. Sasuke's eyes widened. The responsibility was immense, but the trust Naruto was placing in him was a powerful validation. But you'll never hit him, Naruto continued. He's too fast. That's where you come in, Sakura. He turned to her. Your genjutsu is our key. You will not target the Raikage directly, his raw power would shatter any illusion instantly. You will target the environment. You will create subtle, layered illusions. A patch of solid ground that is actually a puddle. A shadow that isn't there. A sound that comes from the wrong direction. Your job is to create a single moment of hesitation in his mind. 1,000th of a second where he has to process a discrepancy. That is the only opening Sasuke will get. Sakura nodded, her mind already racing, understanding the incredible level of precision required. And what will you be doing, sensei? Sasuke asked. Me? Naruto grinned, and it was a sharp, dangerous expression. I'm the distraction. I'm the one he wants. I will be the storm that he focuses on, while the two of you are the poison that seeps into his veins. He stood up, scattering his Hiraishin kunai across the entire canyon, embedding them in cliffsides, behind rocks, and under the earth. This is our web. Now, take your positions. He's almost here. An hour later, they arrived. Two figures appeared at the entrance to the pass, their presence a palpable wave of pressure. The first was the fourth Raikage, a mountain of muscle crackling with golden lightning. The second was a dark-skinned man with sunglasses and 7 swords strapped to his back, his movements loose and unpredictable, a rhythmic, rhyming cadence in his every step. It was the Jinchuriki of the 8 Tails, Killer Bee. Yo, bro, you sure he's here? This place is quiet, you hear? B rhymed, his fists bumping together. He's here, A growled, his eyes scanning the pass. I can feel the echo of his cursed jutsu. He raised his voice, a roar that shook the very mountains. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. I, the fourth Raikage, have come for you. Face me, if you have the guts. Let us see if the son can match the father. I'm right here. Naruto's voice came from directly behind them. They spun around to see him standing calmly on a ledge, his father's coat fluttering in the wind. You're a fool to face us alone, little flea. He rhymed, pointing a sword at him. Who said I was alone? Naruto replied. And then the trap was sprung. The ground beneath the Raikage shimmered, Sakura's genjutsu. At the same time, Sasuke, cloaked in his own illusion, appeared from the rocks, his hand a screaming vortex of lightning. Chidori. Reacting on pure instinct, dodged. But the genjutsu, as predicted, caused a microsecond of hesitation. It was enough. The Chidori, instead of missing completely, grazed the Raikage's lightning armor, leaving a deep, sizzling scar. The Raikage stared at the mark, then at Sasuke, with pure disbelief. He had been hit. He, the fastest shinobi in the world, had been hit by a Genin. A clever trick, snarled, his rage building. But it won't work twice. He charged, a golden thunderbolt aimed at Sasuke. But Naruto was suddenly there, appearing in a yellow flash, intercepting the Raikage's lariat with a Rasengan. The two S-rank jutsu collided, and the resulting shockwave cracked the canyon floor. The battle that followed was a masterclass in teamwork. Naruto was a phantom, using his Hiraishin to appear everywhere at once, harrying the Raikage, forcing him onto the defensive. B moved to engage, but Sakura's genjutsu and Sasuke's fireballs kept him occupied, separating the two brothers. Damn you, brat. Hold still and fight me, A roared, his frustration mounting. He was fighting a ghost he couldn't hit, while being constantly harassed by 2 clever gnats. This ends now, B yelled, his body beginning to glow with the red chakra of the 8 Tails. Let's go, Gyuki. You're right, B, A agreed, the lightning around his body intensifying to a blinding degree. Maximum power. They were done playing games. 2 massive chakra signatures, each 1 cage level, erupted in the canyon. Naruto landed between them and his students, his expression grim. His plan had worked, but he had underestimated their raw power. Team 7 could not survive this. Sasuke, Sakura, Naruto said, not looking back. Get ready. The real fight is about to start. He closed his eyes and reached inward, to the quiet, sun-dappled forest in his mind. Kurama. It's time to let loose. A deep, rumbling laugh echoed in his mind. Finally, the fox growled. Back in the canyon, a wave of golden chakra erupted from Naruto, so immense, so powerful, that it dwarfed even the Raikage's and B's auras. The ground shattered. The sky seemed to darken. The chakra solidified, taking on a tangible, corporeal form, a colossal, translucent avatar of a 9-tailed fox, burning with the intensity of a sun. Naruto stood at its center, his eyes glowing gold, no longer just a shinobi, but a force of nature incarnate. He had unleashed the Kurama avatar. The Raikage and Killer Bee stared, their own immense power dwarfed by the sheer scale of the golden god that stood before them. The fear they felt was a cold, primal thing. This was not the power of a Jinchuriki. This was the power of a demon king. And it was smiling at them. The golden avatar of the 9 Tails was not just a construct of chakra, it was a physical manifestation of overwhelming power. The very air in the Kaku Pass grew heavy, crackling with an energy that made the stones themselves tremble. From their positions behind their sensei, Sasuke and Sakura felt the pressure like a physical weight, forcing them to their knees. It was a power so immense, so absolute, that it was difficult to even breathe in its presence. A and Killer Bee, 2 of the most powerful shinobi in the world, took an involuntary step back. The lightning crackling around Ai's body seemed to dim in the face of the golden radiance. B's usual rhyming bravado died in his throat. They were staring at a god. So, A growled, his voice a low rumble of disbelief and fury. This is the true power of the 9 Tails. Minato didn't just seal it. He tamed it. Tamed is a strong word. A new voice, ancient and powerful, boomed from the golden avatar, speaking through Naruto's mouth. It was Kurama, his consciousness linked with his Jinchurikis. Let's just say we have an understanding. The Avatar's massive head grinned, a terrifying sight. This was the opening move in a battle of legends. His pride stinging more than the Chidori's graze, refused to be intimidated. It doesn't matter. Speed is power. And I am the fastest. He shot forward, a golden thunderbolt of pure rage, aiming his signature lariat, a clothesline attack powerful enough to shatter mountains, at the Avatar's chest. At the same time, Killer Bee acted, 7 of his blades spinning through the air in a complex, deadly dance, aimed at the Avatar's joints, seeking to cripple it. The Kurama Avatar didn't move to dodge. Instead, 6 massive golden arms erupted from its back. 2 of them met Ai's lariat head-on. The clash was apocalyptic. The ground for a mile around them shattered, and a shockwave ripped through the canyon, blasting Sasuke and Sakura back against the rock wall. The Avatar didn't even slide back an inch. The other 4 arms moved with an impossible grace, each one catching one of B's spinning swords between 2 colossal fingers, stopping them dead in their tracks. My turn, Naruto's voice said, calm and focused from within the Avatar. A massive Rasengan, the size of a boulder, formed in one of the Avatar's main hands. But it didn't strike forward. Instead, Naruto threw one of his Hiraishin kunai, which he had scattered across the battlefield. The kunai appeared directly behind Killer Bee. In a flash of yellow light, the entire colossal Rasengan vanished from the Avatar's hand and reappeared behind B. B's eyes widened in horror. He had no time to react. He was forced to partially transform, tentacles of the 8 tails erupting from his back to absorb the blow. The Rasengan slammed into him, sending him careening across the canyon and crashing into a mountainside with enough force to trigger an avalanche. B.A. roared, seeing his brother taken out of the fight so decisively. Your brother is a distraction, Kurama's voice boomed. You are the one I want. The Avatar's fist, larger than a house, swung down towards A. The Raikage, using his maximum speed, managed to dodge, the blow pulverizing the ground where he had been standing, leaving a crater hundreds of feet wide. This was not a fight. It was an execution. Naruto was not just stronger, he was smarter. He was using the Avatar's overwhelming power in perfect concert with his own space-time ninjutsu, a combination that was utterly unbeatable. From the sidelines, Sasuke watched, his Sharingan spinning, trying to absorb every detail. He saw how Naruto used the Avatar's arms not just for attack, but for defense, for misdirection. He saw how every Hiraishin kunai he had thrown earlier had become a potential attack vector for a jutsu of unimaginable scale. This wasn't just a display of power, it was a masterclass in strategy. Sakura, her mind reeling, forced herself to focus. She saw a flicker of strain on Naruto's face within the Avatar. The power was immense, but it was not without cost. Sasuke, she yelled over the roar of the battle. He's using a massive amount of chakra. He can't maintain this forever. We have to support him. As if hearing her, Naruto's voice echoed in their minds, a telepathic link forged by the Kyuubi's chakra. Stay sharp. B is not out of the fight yet. As he spoke, the mountainside where B had crashed exploded. A massive, swirling vortex of dark chakra erupted, a tailed beast bomb forming at its center. From the rubble emerged not a man, but a complete transformation. The 8 tails, Gyuki, a colossal octopus-ox hybrid, roared its fury, its 8 massive tentacles whipping through the air. Fool! You fell for my tailed beast bomb fake out. B's voice boomed from the creature. Now face the might of the great Gyuki. At the same time, A gathered his lightning chakra, preparing for another, even faster assault. Together, B. Lariat. They were preparing a combined assault. A double lariat, one from a cage at maximum speed and one from a fully transformed tailed beast. It was an attack that could potentially vaporize an entire village. Within the golden avatar, Naruto's expression was grim. He had them on the ropes, but now they were unleashing everything. Sasuke. Sakura. Now is the time. Naruto's voice commanded in their minds. The plan we practiced. Do it. Sasuke and Sakura looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. This was their moment. Their chance to prove they were not just liabilities, but worthy members of Team 7. As the Raikage and the 8 tails charged, Sakura slammed her hands on the ground, pouring every ounce of her refined chakra control into the earth. The entire canyon floor rippled, and a massive, complex genjutsu took hold, not of their minds, but of their senses of balance and perception. At the same time, Sasuke's hands flew through seals. Fire style, Great Dragon Flame Song. It was a jutsu far beyond the standard dragon fire. He unleashed not one, but 5 massive dragons of fire that soared into the sky, not to attack, but to converge on a single point above the battlefield, creating a miniature sun that blinded the charging cage and tailed beast with its intense light and heat. The combined sensory assault, the disorienting ground and the blinding light, caused A and Yuki to falter for a single, critical instant. It was all Naruto needed. The Kurama avatar raised its hands, and a tailed beast bomb of its own began to form, a sphere of impossibly dense, swirling positive and negative chakra. But Naruto added his own twist. He poured his wind nature into it. The black sphere began to scream, a high-pitched shriek of power, as a massive, spiraling shuriken of wind formed around it. "Let's see you handle this." Naruto and Kurama roared as one. Tailed beast bomb, Rasen shuriken. He didn't just fire it. The avatar's arm cocked back and threw the spinning vortex of destruction like a fastball. The ultimate ninjutsu, perfected and amplified by the power of the 9 tails, screamed across the canyon to meet the 2 most powerful shinobi from the land of lightning head-on. The world turned white. The world did not just turn white, it ceased to exist. For a single, eternal moment, there was no sound, no sensation, only an all-consuming, silent explosion of power that scoured the Kaku Pass clean. The very mountains seemed to scream as the tailed beast bomb Rasen shuriken detonated, its microscopic wind blades shredding everything in their path. When reality reasserted itself, the landscape was unrecognizable. The canyon had been widened by half a mile, the cliff sheared away as if by a giant's razor. The river had been vaporized, leaving behind a deep, glassy trench of fused rock. A fine dust, all that remained of tons of pulverized stone, filled the air. In the center of this new wasteland, the golden avatar was gone. Naruto stood alone, his father's coat torn to shreds, his body trembling with exhaustion, his chakra reserve scraped so dry he felt hollow. He was panting, his knees threatening to buckle, but he was standing. Across from him, the scene was one of utter defeat. The 8 tails was gone. Killer Bee lay unconscious in a deep crater, reverted to his human form, his body bruised but miraculously intact, having been shielded by his tailed beast at the last possible second. The 4th Raikage, A, was on one knee. His legendary lightning release chakra mode was gone, shattered like glass. His muscular body was covered in thousands of tiny cuts, and his left arm, which had taken the brunt of the blast, was mangled beyond recognition, a ruined stump of flesh and bone. He stared at his ruined limb, then at the boy standing before him, his face a mask of profound, absolute shock. He had lost. He, the fastest and most powerful shinobi in the world, had been utterly and completely defeated. Naruto took a shaky step forward, then another, walking slowly towards the fallen cage. Sasuke and Sakura, who had been shielded from the blast by a last-second chakra wall from the avatar, rushed to his side, ready to support him. "Stay back," Naruto ordered, his voice a weary rasp. "This is between us." He stopped before the Raikage. A looked up, his eyes filled with a rage that was now overshadowed by a deep, crushing confusion. "How?" he growled. "How is this possible? My speed. My power. It's absolute." "Your power comes from rage," Naruto said, his voice quiet but echoing in the unnatural silence. "Your speed comes from pride. You abandoned your army, your entire front, for a personal vendetta. You came here to fight one person." He gestured back towards his students. "I came here to protect my team. My power comes from them. From my friends. From my village. From my father. From Kurama." He looked down at the defeated cage. "You fight for yourself. I fight for everyone else. That is the difference between us. That is why you lost." The words struck A harder than the Rasen shuriken had. He saw the truth in them. He had been so consumed by the ghost of Minato, by his own pride, that he had risked everything for a duel. Naruto, on the other hand, had used teamwork, strategy, and a power born of bonds to achieve a victory so complete it was paradigm-shifting. Naruto knelt, his face now level with the Raikage's. "Take your brother. Go home. Tell that Tsuchikage what you saw here today. Tell him the war of the 2 flashes is over before it even began. Tell him Konoha's will for peace is stronger than your will for war. Do not test it again." It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact, delivered with a weariness that spoke of immense power and the burden that came with it. This act of mercy, this dismissal after a display of godlike power, was the final, crushing blow. It was a declaration of confidence so absolute it was more terrifying than any threat of annihilation. A stared at the boy, at the son of his greatest rival, and for the first time, he saw not a monster or a weapon, but a true leader. He slowly, painfully, got to his feet. He walked over to his unconscious brother, lifted him onto his shoulder, and without another word, turned and began the long, humiliating journey back to Kumagakure. As they vanished from sight, Naruto's strength finally gave out. He collapsed, his body spent. Sasuke and Sakura caught him before he hit the ground. "Sensei," Sakura cried, her hands immediately glowing with green medical chakra as she began pouring her own energy into him. Sasuke supported Naruto's weight, his expression a complex mixture of awe, respect, and a new, profound understanding. The rivalry was dead. It had been incinerated in the light of the golden avatar. He was looking at his leader, his friend, the person he would follow into any battle. "He's just exhausted," Sakura said, relieved. "His chakra levels are almost at zero." As the sun began to rise, casting its first rays over the newly carved canyon, Sasuke and Sakura sat with their sensei, protecting him as he recovered. The Fourth Great Ninja War had ended in a single battle, not with a treaty, but with a demonstration. The world had a new apex predator, a new standard of power by which all others would be measured. And his name was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. The journey back to Konoha was a hero's return. The 3rd and 4th Battalions, led by Itachi and Shisui, met them at the border, their faces a mixture of relief and utter awe. The news had already reached them, the Raikage had been defeated, the Kumo army was in full retreat, and the war was, for all intents and purposes, over. The official end came a week later. A humiliated and broken his left arm now permanently gone, and a chastened Aniki signed a swift and unconditional peace treaty. The terms were harsh but not crippling. Minato was a statesman, not a conqueror. The Fourth Great Ninja War, the shortest and most decisive in history, ended not with a bang, but with the quiet scratch of a pen. The world had learned its lesson. You do not challenge a village with 2 yellow flashes. Life in Konoha settled into a new, unprecedented era of peace and prosperity. The village was the undisputed superpower of the shinobi world, and its people walked with a new confidence. Naruto, the hero who had ended the war in a single battle, became a living legend. But he shied away from the fame, preferring the quiet company of his team and his friends. He poured his energy into training Team 7. Sasuke, his rivalry now forged into a powerful respect, pushed himself to master the Chidori in all its forms, striving to one day stand as Naruto's true equal on the battlefield. Sakura became the head intern at the Konoha hospital, her medical ninjutsu skills and sharp intellect making her the most promising medic nin since Tsunade Senju herself. They were a formidable team, their bond unbreakable. Naruto's relationship with Satsuki also deepened. In a world that saw him as a god of the battlefield, she saw him as Naruto, the kind, sometimes clumsy boy who still couldn't master a simple fireball jutsu. She was his anchor to a normal life, a life he cherished more than any title. It was 3 months after the war's end that Naruto first noticed something was wrong. Itachi, his captain and brother in arms, had missed their last 2 training sessions. It was completely out of character for the disciplined Uchiha. "Where's Itachi?" Naruto asked Shisui as they sat on their usual rooftop spot. Shisui's usual cheerful grin was gone, replaced by a worried frown. "He's not feeling well. He's at the hospital." A cold knot of dread formed in Naruto's stomach. He immediately headed for the hospital. He found Itachi's room, expecting to see him with a simple training injury. Instead, he found his friend looking pale and gaunt, a faint tremor in his hands. He was staring out the window, a deep, weary sadness in his eyes that Naruto had never seen before. "Itachi? What's wrong?" Naruto asked, his voice tight with concern. Itachi turned, forcing a small, weak smile. "Naruto. It is nothing. Just exhaustion from the war. The doctors are being overly cautious." He coughed, a dry, rattling sound that shook his entire frame. Naruto wasn't fooled. He could sense chakra. He could feel the erratic, flickering pulse of Itachi's life force. It was like a candle flame guttering in the wind, threatening to go out. This wasn't exhaustion. This was an illness, deep and corrosive. "Don't lie to me," Naruto said, his voice low. "What is it?" "It is the price of the Mangekyo Sharingan," Itachi admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "It consumes the user's light. And their life. My vision is fading. My body is failing." The words hit Naruto like a physical blow. Itachi, the genius, the pillar of strength, was dying. He thought of all their missions together, of the quiet wisdom and unwavering loyalty. He thought of the man who was more of a brother to him than anyone besides Shisui. Unacceptable. He stormed out of the hospital, a cold fury burning in his chest. He went directly to the Hokage Tower, not even stopping to knock on his father's office door. "What is wrong with Itachi?" he demanded. Minato and Jiraiya, who had been in a meeting, looked up, surprised by his tone. Minato sighed, a weary sadness on his face. It's a degenerative disease caused by his eyes. The hospital's best medics can only slow its progress. There is no known cure. That's not good enough. Naruto retorted. There has to be someone. The best medic nin in the world. His eyes widened as the realization hit him. Tsunade. Tsunade left the village years ago, Jiraiya said gruffly. She has no desire to return. She's lost in her grief and her gambling. Then I'll find her, Naruto declared, his voice ringing with an absolute, unshakable resolve. I will not let my friend die. Father. Hokage-sama. I am requesting permission for an S-rank mission. To find Tsunade Senju and bring her back to this village. Minato looked at the fire in his son's eyes. It was the same fire he had seen in Kushina, a fierce, unstoppable loyalty to the people she loved. He knew there was no arguing. Permission granted, Minato said. Who will you take? Shisui, Naruto said instantly. He has a right to be there. And he looked at the Toad Sage. Jiraiya-sensei. You're the only one who might have a clue where to even start looking for her. Jiraiya grunted, but a small smile played on his lips. Searching for a beautiful woman with a gambling problem? Hey. Sounds like my kind of mission. The next morning, a new team stood at the gates of Konoha. Naruto, the village's greatest hero. Shisui, the Uchiha's kindest heart, desperate to save his best friend. And Jiraiya, the legendary Sannin, on a quest to bring back his old teammate from the brink. Their mission was not one of war or politics. It was a mission of hope. A race against time to save a friend. The search for Tsunade Senju was like chasing a ghost. Jiraiya's network of spies, for all its reach, could only provide whispers and rumors. She was seen in Tanzaku quarters a month ago, one informant would say. She won a small fortune at a dice game, then lost it all. Another would claim, I heard she was drinking her way through the land of tea, paying her tabs with medical ninjutsu. Tsunade was a legend in hiding, deliberately leaving a trail of chaos and debt to throw off anyone who might be looking for her. Their journey led them to a bustling, neutral port town known as Shitamachi, a haven for mercenaries, information brokers, and shinobi of all allegiances. The air was thick with the scent of salt, sake, and secrets. All right, Jiraiya said, a familiar, lecherous grin spreading across his face as he surveyed the town's lively entertainment district. If you want to find a woman who loves to gamble and drink, you have to think like one. My research indicates our best chance of picking up her trail will be in the local bars and gambling dens. Of course it does, Shisui sighed, though he was smiling. Lead the way, pervy sage. Hey! It's a legitimate intelligence gathering strategy. Jiraiya protested. They stopped before a particularly rowdy-looking establishment, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses spilling out into the street. This looks like a good place to start, Jiraiya declared. You two are too recognizable, Naruto said, stopping them and pulling up the hood of his simple travel cloak to obscure his blonde hair and whiskered cheeks. A Sannin and Shisui of the body flicker walking into a place like this will have everyone on guard. I'll go in alone. Under this hood, I'm just another face in the crowd. I'll listen, see what I can hear. Jiraiya and Shisui exchanged a look. Naruto was right. His logic was sound, but there was also a new, confident maturity in his demeanor that was hard to argue with. All right, brat, Jiraiya grunted. But be careful. A place like this is full of sharks. I know, Naruto said, his expression calm. Don't worry. I can handle myself. He pushed through the doors and entered the bar. It was smoky, crowded, and loud. Mercenaries with scarred faces sized him up as he walked in, but his hooded, unassuming demeanor made them quickly lose interest. He was just another traveler. He took a seat at the far end of the counter, ordering a simple glass of water, and began to listen. His enhanced senses sifted through the noise, picking up dozens of conversations. He heard gossip about the failed war, whispers of bounties, and complaints about the price of steel. Then, his ear caught a conversation from a nearby table where 5 rough-looking shinobi were drinking heavily. Did you see the new bingo book? One of them asked, his voice a low growl. The one they issued right after the war. Yeah, I got my copy, another replied, pulling a worn book from his vest. Some of the bounties are insane. They put a Kumo Jonin on there for 500,000 ryo. Forget him, the first shinobi said, leaning in conspiratorially. Flip to page 77. The shinobi with the book did so, his eyes widening as he read. No way. Are you serious? Read it, the first one urged. The shinobi cleared his throat, his voice dropping to a hushed, reverent tone. Uzumaki namikaze, Naruto. Classification, Triple S rank. Nickname, Konoha's Second Flash. Affiliation, Konoha Jonin, Commander of the Northern Front. Abilities, Hiraishin no Jutsu, Rasengan, Mastery of Wind Style, Tailed Beast Control. Note, engagement is strictly forbidden. Under any and all circumstances, flee on sight. Survival is not guaranteed. A heavy silence fell over their table. Triple S. There hasn't been a Triple S rank since his old man in the Third War, one of them whispered, his face pale. Flee on sight. Another repeated, taking a large swig of his drink. They say he took out 2,000 Kumo shinobi by himself. Just erased them. Ended the whole damn war in 10 minutes. I, for one, am extremely happy he's on our side of the continent, the first shinobi concluded, and the others nodded in fervent agreement. As they spoke, a young woman who worked behind the bar approached Naruto. She was in her early 20s, with a kind smile and bright, curious eyes. Sorry for the wait. It's a busy night. What can I get for you? She, too, overheard the hushed conversation from the nearby table. Her eyes flickered to the bingo book, then back to the hooded figure sitting in front of her. Naruto, who had been listening to the entire exchange, simply grinned at her from beneath his hood, a charming, sly wink creasing the corner of his eye. Whiskey, he said, his voice a smooth, confident baritone that seemed at odds with his age. Neat. The bartender's hand paused as she processed the name she'd just heard, Uzumaki Namikaze. Her eyes darted from the shinobi's open bingo book to the hooded figure before her. He winked, and his hood shifted up just enough for the dim bar light to catch the 3 distinct whisker marks on each cheek. Her breath caught in her throat. The bingo book illustration, the name, the legendary whisker marks. It was him. A deep blush flooded her face, a mixture of shock, awe, and a little bit of fear. Right away. She squeaked, her voice barely a whisper, before practically fleeing to get his order, her heart pounding in her chest. The bartender returned a moment later, her hands trembling slightly as she placed the glass of amber liquid on the counter. 1. Whiskey, she managed, trying her best to act professional while in the presence of a living legend. Naruto gave her a warm, disarming smile, the intimidating aura from his wink completely gone. Thank you. He took a slow sip, his eyes scanning the room. Tough crowd tonight. Always is, she replied, wiping down a clean spot on the bar. This town attracts a certain kind of person. I'm looking for a certain kind of person, actually, Naruto said, his voice dropping to a more confidential tone. A woman. Blonde, beautiful, probably complaining about her terrible luck. She's a legendary gambler, but a legendary sucker, too. Loses more than she wins. Has a bit of a temper. Sound familiar? The bartender frowned in concentration, her initial awe replaced by a professional's focus. A legendary sucker. I can think of a dozen of those. But a blonde woman. She shook her head. No one like that has come through here recently. But if anyone in Shitamachi would know about a high-stakes gambler, it would be them. She subtly tilted her head towards the table of 5 shinobi who had been reading his bingo book entry. They run the big gambling den on the east side. The House of Fortunate Souls. Nothing happens in the gambling world without them knowing about it. I see, Naruto said, finishing his drink in one smooth motion. He placed the glass back on the counter with a quiet click. Thank you for your help. He stood up, his hooded figure seeming to command the space around him. He walked over to the shinobi's table with a confident, easy gait that drew their attention. They looked up from their drinks, their expressions turning hostile at the approach of a stranger. Fellers, Naruto said, his voice calm and even. I have some questions for you. The leader of the group, a large man with a scar across his nose, sneered. Get lost, brat. The grown-ups are talking. Another one laughed. Beat it before you get hurt. Naruto didn't move. He simply reached up with one hand and slowly pulled back his hood. Now, he said, his calm blue eyes meeting theirs, his whisker marks clearly visible in the dim light. Is that any way to talk to a fellow shinobi of the leaf? The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The sneer on the leader's face froze, then melted into an expression of pure, slack-jawed horror. The man who had been laughing choked on his drink. All 5 of them scrambled to their feet, knocking over their chairs in their haste, their faces ashen. They bowed so low their foreheads nearly touched the sticky floor. And Naruto-sama. Forgive us. We didn't realize. The leader stammered, his voice trembling. The commotion drew the attention of the entire bar. A wave of whispers spread as people recognized the face from the bingo book, the face of the boy who had ended a war. The rowdy establishment fell into a stunned, reverent silence. Naruto raised a hand, his expression calm and untroubled. Everyone, Please, keep to yourselves. I'm just here on business. He turned to the wide-eyed bartender. As a matter of fact, the next 3 rounds for everyone are on me. The silence was broken by a deafening cheer. The tension vanished, replaced by the joyous sound of a bar that had just been given free rein. The patrons, happy for the drinks and content to be part of a legendary story, mostly returned to their conversations, though they continued to steal curious glances. Naruto gestured to the now empty chairs at the table. Please. Sit. The 5 shinobi, still trembling, cautiously sat back down. Naruto took a seat with them, leaning forward with a friendly smile that did little to calm their frayed nerves. Now, he said, his voice pleasant. I'm looking for an old friend of my family. A legendary sucker with terrible luck and a love for high-stakes games. Her name is Tsunade. Tell me everything you know. The 5 shinobi looked at each other, their faces a mixture of terror and a desperate desire to be helpful. The leader, the man with the scarred nose, swallowed hard and leaned forward, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. Tsunade-sama. Yes, we know the name, he said, his voice trembling slightly. The legendary sucker. She passed through here about 2 weeks ago. It was memorable. She came into the house of fortunate souls like a storm, another one added, his eyes wide at the memory. She was with a younger woman, quiet, with black hair, who was carrying a small pig. Tsunade-sama demanded the highest stakes table we had. And her luck. It was unnatural, the leader continued. For the first 2 hours, she couldn't lose. Every roll of the dice, every hand of cards, it all went her way. She took us for nearly 3 million ryo. We thought she was going to bankrupt the entire establishment. Naruto listened patiently, nodding for them to continue. But then, the shinobi said with a grimace, her luck turned. And it turned hard. It was like watching a waterfall go in reverse. She started making reckless bets, trying to win it all back in one go. By the end of the night, she hadn't just lost the 3 million she'd won, she'd racked up another 5 million in debt. She caused quite a scene, the smallest of the group chimed in. Threw a table through a wall when we finally had to cut her off. The woman has a temper like a volcano. Where did she go? Naruto asked, his voice cutting straight to the point. She was furious, the leader said. Said our town was cursed and our dice were loaded. She was complaining about needing to make a real score to pay us back. We heard her asking about Tanzaku quarters. The castles, the big casinos. That's the only place with stakes high enough to cover a debt that big. Tanzaku quarters. Naruto filed the name away. It was their next destination. Thank you for your cooperation, Naruto said, standing up. Your information has been very helpful. He placed a heavy pouch of ryo on the table. For your troubles, and for the drinks. The 5 shinobi stared at the money, then back at Naruto, bowing their heads in unison. Anything for you, Naruto-sama. Anything for the leaf. Naruto gave a final nod to the blushing bartender, who quickly looked away, and then walked out of the bar, melting back into the crowded streets of Shitamachi. He found Jiraiya and Shisui in a nearby alley, waiting impatiently. Well? Jiraiya demanded. Did your little excursion bear any fruit? Tanzaku quarters, Naruto said simply, relaying the information he had gathered. She was here 2 weeks ago. Left a massive debt and was headed for the big casinos. Jiraiya let out a long, weary sigh. Of course. Tanzaku quarters. The one place I was hoping to avoid. It's crawling with bounty hunters and rogue ninja. He then grinned. But the hot springs are first class. A little research is in order. You're unbelievable, Shisui said, shaking his head. He looked at Naruto, a new respect in his eyes. You handled that perfectly, Naruto. You got the information without a single kunai thrown. You're becoming a true leader. I just talked to them, Naruto said with a shrug. No, Shisui corrected him, a smile in his voice. You commanded them. There's a difference. As they prepared to leave the port town and head for the glittering, dangerous lights of Tanzaku quarters, Naruto knew the hunt was nearing its end. Tsunade was close. But he also knew that convincing a legendary, heartbroken Sannin to return to a life she had abandoned would be a far greater challenge than intimidating a few gamblers in a bar. Tanzaku quarters was a city built on vice and dreams. Unlike the stark, functional architecture of the shinobi villages, Tanzaku was a riot of color and light. Paper lanterns of every hue cast a warm glow on streets thronged with merchants, travelers, and pleasure seekers. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes, exotic foods, and the faint, metallic tang of spilled sake. Towering above it all were the grand castles of the casinos, their lights blazing against the night sky, promising fortune and ruin in equal measure. All right, boys, stick close, Jiraiya said, his demeanor shifting from that of a legendary Sannin to a seasoned connoisseur of nightlife. This place isn't like a battlefield. The dangers here are subtler. A pretty smile can hide a poisoned needle, and a friendly game of cards can leave you with an empty wallet and a knife in your back. He led them through the bustling streets, navigating the crowds with an expert ease. Shisui looked around with wide-eyed curiosity, while Naruto remained focused, his senses on high alert, filtering through the cacophony of the city for any sign of their target. Their search took them through 3 different gambling dens. In each one, the story was the same. Tsunade had been there, a whirlwind of legendary luck followed by a catastrophic losing streak, leaving behind a trail of broken tables and furious debt collectors. She's getting desperate, Jiraiya mused as they stood outside the 3rd casino. She's chasing a big win, and she's getting sloppy. There's only one place left she would go. He pointed to the largest, most opulent castle in the city, a towering pagoda of gold and crimson. The daimyo's fortune. The stakes there are high enough to buy a small country. If she's anywhere, she's there. The interior of the daimyo's fortune was a world of quiet, high-stakes tension. The air was thick with the scent of money. Samurai in fine silk stood as guards, their hands resting on the hilts of their katanas. Here, a shinobi's rank meant little, only the weight of one's purse earned respect. They found her on the top floor, in a private room overlooking the city. She wasn't at a table. She was sitting alone at a small bar, a half-empty bottle of expensive sake before her. She was beautiful, exactly as Jiraiya had described, but her face was etched with a deep, profound weariness. Her brown eyes, once said to sparkle with life, were dull and cynical. Beside her, her apprentice, Shizune, was trying to coax her into eating something, a small pig, Tauntaun, sleeping in her lap. Jiraiya took a deep breath. "Tsunade," he said, his voice softer than Naruto had ever heard it. Tsunade didn't even turn around. "Jiraiya," she said, her voice a low, slurred drawl. "Still chasing skirts and writing those filthy books, I see. What gutter did you crawl out of?" "It's good to see you too, Haim," Jiraiya said, his usual bravado failing him in the face of her cold indifference. She finally turned. Her gaze swept over Jiraiya, then landed on Shisui. As it did, Shizune, who was sitting beside her, gasped softly, a faint blush rising on her cheeks as she recognized the charming Uchiha from their brief encounter years ago. Tsunade caught the reaction, and a cruel smirk touched her lips for a second before her eyes continued their sweep, finally landing on Naruto. She recognized him instantly. The blonde hair, the blue eyes, the whisker marks, the face plastered all over the new bingo books. The face of the boy who had ended a war. Well, she sneered, taking a long drink from the bottle. If it isn't the hero of the hour. Konoha's second flash. Come to lecture an old woman on her drinking habits? Or are you here to give me a speech about the will of fire, about my duty to the village? Save your breath. I heard all about your little display at Kaku Pass. Killing thousands to save hundreds. That's the will of fire I know. A lie that old men, and boys playing at being men, tell themselves to justify the slaughter. I'm not here to talk about the war, Naruto said, his voice cutting through her drunken tirade, his expression unfazed. I'm here because my friend is dying. He paused. Itachi Uchiha is dying. Tsunade froze, the bottle halfway to her lips. The name of the Uchiha prodigy, a key figure in the war she had just mocked, clearly registered. He has a disease, Naruto continued, his gaze intense. A sickness in his chakra network that no one in Konoha can heal. They say you are the greatest medic nin in the world. They say you can heal any injury, cure any illness. I'm not here as the second flash. I'm here as a friend asking for your help. Tsunade stared at him, her cynical mask cracking for just a moment, revealing the deep well of pain beneath. She looked at her own hands, hands that had saved countless lives, but had failed to save the 2 people she loved most. I don't heal people anymore, she whispered, her voice trembling. Every time I try. Everyone I care about dies. I'm cursed. That's a coward's excuse, Naruto said, his voice sharp but not unkind. You're not cursed. You're scared. Scared of losing someone again. Tsunade slammed the bottle down on the table, her eyes blazing with fury. What would a child know about my loss? I know enough, Naruto replied quietly. He took a step closer. I'll make you a bet, Tsunade. 1 roll of the dice. If I win, you come back to Konoha and at least look at Itachi. If you win, I'll give you every ryo I have, and you'll never hear from Konoha again. Tsunade stared at him, then a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. A bet. This was a language she understood. You've got guts, kid. I'll give you that. You've got a deal. Tsunade-sama, no. Shizune pleaded, her voice filled with panic. It was an automatic, conditioned response born from years of watching her master lose everything on impulsive bets. But beneath the surface-level fear for Tsunade's finances, her heart pounded with a secret, forbidden hope. Konoha. Shisui-san. The thought of returning home, of seeing the charming Uchiha again, was a powerful pull she dared not acknowledge. You don't have to do this, she said, her words fighting against her own deepest wishes. Quiet, Shizune, Tsunade snapped, her eyes locked on Naruto, a dangerous fire rekindled within them. The kid has guts. He wants to play with the big dogs, let's see if he can handle the bite. She slammed her hands on the bar. Fine. One roll. You and me, brat. Highest number wins. Jiraiya stepped forward, pulling a pair of simple, bone-white dice from his pouch. A fair roll, he said, placing them on the bar. No tricks, no loaded weights. He looked at his old teammate, his expression unreadable. Tsunade picked up the dice, her knuckles white. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. This wasn't just a gamble for money, it was a gamble for a life, for the future of the Leaf. Shisui stood silently, his hand resting near his tanto, ready for any outcome. You roll first, kid, Tsunade said, pushing the dice towards Naruto. Show me what kind of luck the hero of the Leaf has. Naruto shook his head. You roll, he said calmly. I'm betting on your luck, not mine. The statement was a subtle, brilliant jab. He wasn't challenging her skill or her power, he was challenging her infamous curse. Tsunade's eyes narrowed, a low growl rumbling in her throat. She snatched the dice, rattled them in her hand with a sound like shaking bones, and threw them across the bar. They tumbled, spun, and settled. Snake eyes. A 1 and a 1. The worst possible roll. A stunned, deathly silence fell over the room. Shizune looked like she was about to faint, a wave of dizzying relief and shock washing over her. He'd won. They were going home. Jiraiya let out a slow, sad breath. Shisui couldn't help but let a small, disbelieving smirk touch his lips. Tsunade stared at the dice, her face a mask of utter disbelief. It was so statistically improbable, so perfectly, catastrophically unlucky, that it was almost a work of art. Her curse had not just made her lose, it had made her lose in the most humiliating way imaginable. She looked up at Naruto, expecting to see a triumphant grin, a look of smug satisfaction. But Naruto's expression was calm, serious, and tinged with a hint of sympathy. He showed no joy in her defeat. He had simply stated a fact and watched it come to pass. Tsunade's shoulders slumped. The fiery anger drained out of her, replaced by a profound, weary resignation. She had lost. Not to his power, not to his fame, but to her own damn luck. She threw her head back and let out a long, harsh laugh that held no humor, only the bitter taste of defeat. All right, kid, she said, finally meeting his gaze. You win. She stood up, her movement stiff. A deal's a deal. She turned to her apprentice. Shizune. Pack our things. Shizune, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and a dawning, fragile hope, could only nod. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya, then at Naruto. Fine. I'll go back to that damn village. I'll look at your Uchiha friend. She picked up her sake bottle and drained the last of it. But make no mistake. I'm not doing this for the Leaf. I'm not doing it for the will of fire. She pointed a finger at Naruto. I'm doing this because a blonde-haired, blue-eyed brat with more guts than sense managed to beat me at my own game. With that, she turned and walked towards her room, her back straight, her pride battered but not broken. The legendary Sannin, Tsunade of the Slugs, was going home. The journey back to Konoha was a quiet, tense affair. Tsunade, true to her word, accompanied them, but she did so with a sullen, simmering anger. She drank heavily, her gaze fixed on the passing landscape, refusing to engage in any conversation beyond curt, one-word answers. Shizune walked beside her, her expression a mixture of worry for her master and a quiet, hopeful excitement that she tried desperately to conceal, though she occasionally shared a small, shy smile with Shisui when Tsunade wasn't looking. Jiraiya attempted to bridge the gap with old stories of their time as a team, but Tsunade would shut him down with a cold glare. It was Naruto who became the unexpected center of their group. He walked with a calm purpose, his presence a steady anchor in the turbulent emotional sea of the two Sannin. He didn't try to placate Tsunade or cheer her up, he simply treated her with a quiet respect, as if her presence were the most natural thing in the world. This, more than anything, seemed to slowly chip away at her defenses. Their arrival at the gates of Konoha caused a sensation. The guards on duty did a double-take, their eyes widening in disbelief. The news spread through the village like a shockwave. Not one, but two of the legendary Sannin had returned, escorted by the village's greatest hero. Civilians stopped in the streets to stare, whispering in awe. They didn't stop. They walked directly to the Hokage Tower. The reunion in the Hokage's office was thick with history. Minato stood to greet them, his face a mixture of relief and respect. "Tsunade-sama," he said, bowing his head slightly. "Welcome home. Thank you for returning." "Don't thank me, Minato," Tsunade said, her voice rough. "I'm not here for you or this village. I'm here because I lost a bet to your son." She looked at Naruto. "A deal is a deal. Take me to the Uchiha." The atmosphere in the Konoha hospital was one of hushed reverence as Tsunade walked through the halls. The medical staff, who had only ever read about her techniques in textbooks, stopped what they were doing to stare. Sakura, as the head intern on duty, met them at the entrance to the critical care wing, her face pale with awe. "Tsunade-sama," Sakura stammered, bowing deeply. "It is an honor." Tsunade barely glanced at her, her focus entirely on the mission. "Where is he?" They entered Itachi's room. The scene was quiet and somber. Itachi was sitting up in bed, looking out the window. He was paler, thinner, but his composure was as perfect as ever. Satsuki was sitting in a chair beside him, reading aloud from a book in a quiet voice. She looked up as they entered, her eyes widening when she saw the legendary medic Nin. Tsunade took in the scene, the dying prodigy, the worried best friend, Shisui, the fiercely hopeful comrade, Naruto, and the devoted cousin who refused to leave his side. It was a painful echo of her own past, a tableau of love and impending loss that struck a deep, painful chord within her. She pushed the emotion down, her face becoming a mask of pure, clinical professionalism. "Everyone out," she commanded. Except for the patient. Naruto, Shisui, and the others waited in the hallway, the silence stretching for what felt like an eternity. Finally, after nearly an hour, Tsunade emerged. Her face was grim, her expression unreadable. "Well?" Shisui asked, his voice tight with anxiety. Tsunade looked at them, her gaze hard. "The diagnosis from your doctors was correct. It's a degenerative cellular decay, triggered and accelerated by the use of the Mangekyo Sharingan. His chakra pathways are corroding from the inside out. It's woven into his very DNA." She took a deep breath. "There is no known cure." The words fell like stones, shattering the fragile hope in the hallway. Shisui staggered back as if struck, and Naruto felt a cold dread wash over him. "But..." Tsunade's voice cut through their despair, a flicker of the old, defiant fire returning to her eyes. "I didn't say it was impossible." She looked at Naruto, at the boy who had challenged her, who had refused to accept her resignation. "No known cure just means no one has been smart enough or stubborn enough to create one yet." A fierce, determined smirk touched her lips. "This disease. Its complexity is fascinating. It will be a challenge." She turned and walked down the hall, her purpose renewed. "Shizune. Prepare the laboratory. I need every scroll we have on cellular regeneration and Kekkei Genkai theory. And get me a bottle of the good stuff. It's going to be a long night." She hadn't accepted the will of fire. She hadn't returned for the sake of the village. She had returned because she had been presented with an opponent she couldn't beat with her fists or her luck, an impossible medical challenge. And Tsunade Senju never backed down from a fight. Tsunade threw herself into the challenge with the ferocity of a cornered lioness. The Hokage granted her full authority over a wing of the hospital and unrestricted access to the village's medical archives, including scrolls on Kekkei Genkai and cellular biology that had been sealed since the second Hokage's time. The laboratory became her kingdom, a chaotic whirlwind of scrolls, anatomical charts, and empty sake bottles. She took Sakura under her wing, not as a gentle mentor, but as a demanding, terrifying taskmaster. "Your chakra control is sloppy." She would bark, after Sakura performed a complex healing jutsu. "You wasted a full 10% of your energy on that cell activation. Do it again." Sakura, rather than wilting, thrived under the pressure. She absorbed every lesson, her sharp mind soaking up Tsunade's legendary knowledge like a sponge. She was witnessing medical genius firsthand, and it ignited a fire in her. Naruto, Shisui, and Jiraiya became Tsunade's errand boys. "I need a sample of the Mangekyo's residual chakra. Go spar with Itachi until he activates it." She would order Naruto. "I need a live sample of a Hozuki clan member's cellular structure. Jiraiya, go find one in your spy network." She'd demand. "Shisui, you're fast. Get me a rare medicinal herb that only grows on the highest peak in the land of iron. You have 6 hours." They obeyed without question, their own S-rank missions now centered around this single, desperate hope. Weeks turned into a month. Itachi's condition stabilized under Tsunade's care, the progression of the disease halted, but a true cure remained elusive. The problem is the decay, Tsunade explained one late night in the lab, gesturing to a complex diagram on the wall. The Mangekyo doesn't just consume chakra, it actively breaks down the user's cells, rewriting their DNA with every use. It's like a poison with no antidote. I can regenerate the damaged cells, but the poison remains. It's a losing battle. So what's the answer? Naruto asked, looking at the exhausted Sannin. The answer, Tsunade said, a wild, brilliant glint in her eyes, is to find a stronger life force. Something with regenerative capabilities so powerful it can overwhelm the poison and force the cells to rebuild correctly. She looked directly at Naruto. The answer is Uzumaki DNA. Naruto blinked. My clan? The Uzumaki clan were masters of life force and sealing jutsu, Tsunade explained. Your vitality is off the charts, even without the Kyuubi. It's why you can handle that much power. Your mother, Kushina, could survive having a tailed beast ripped out of her, long enough to help seal it. That's a testament to the sheer resilience of your bloodline. She paused. And there was another. A contemporary of my grandfather, the first Hokage. His wife. Mito Uzumaki. The first Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. What are you saying? Naruto asked, a knot forming in his stomach. I'm saying we need a pure, untainted sample of Uzumaki life energy, Tsunade said. But we can't use yours. The Kyuubi's chakra is too intertwined with your own. It would be like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. We need to find another source. She looked at a map on the wall. The Uzumaki clan's ancestral home, the land of whirlpools, was destroyed decades ago. But legends say their main temple, a repository of their most powerful seals and artifacts, was hidden away, protected by seals so powerful no one could break them. You want us to find a lost temple that might not even exist? Shisui asked. I want you to find a source of Uzumaki life force, Tsunade corrected him. It could be a sealed artifact, a living plant infused with their chakra, anything. It's our only shot. Minato, after hearing the report, agreed. The mission was approved. It was a desperate long shot, a treasure hunt based on legends and rumors. Team 7 is on standby for this one, Minato said to Naruto. This is too dangerous, and the lead is too thin. I'm assigning you and Shisui. Itachi, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. He was still pale, but his eyes were clear and steady. Hokage-sama, I must be a part of this mission. You are in no condition to. Minato began. I am the reason for this mission, Itachi countered, his voice quiet but firm. My eyes can help decipher any ancient texts or seals we find. I will not sit here and wait while my comrades risk their lives for me. I will be an asset, not a liability. Minato looked at the unwavering resolve of the Uchiha prodigy and sighed. Very well. But you are to engage in no combat. Your role is analysis only. Is that understood? Yes, Hokage-sama, Itachi said. And so, the team was reformed. Naruto, Itachi, and Shisui. Their mission, to chase a ghost, to find the last remnants of a dead clan, and to steal from the ruins of the past a miracle that could save the future. Their journey would take them to the land of whirlpools, a place of treacherous currents and forgotten secrets, on a desperate quest to find a cure that lay hidden in the heart of a lost legend. Chapter 5. The land of whirlpools was a place that existed more in memory than on any map. The journey there was treacherous, taking them across stormy seas that had claimed countless ships. As they approached the archipelago, the reason for its isolation became clear. The ocean churned in a constant, violent rage, forming massive, ship-swallowing whirlpools that guarded the islands like ancient sea monsters. No ship could survive this, Shisui said, looking out at the churning chaos from a high cliff on the mainland. Then we won't use a ship, Naruto replied. He looked at Itachi, who was already looking pale from the sea journey. Itachi, you and Shisui will wait here. I'll scout ahead. Before they could protest, Naruto summoned a small, agile toad. Kosuke, I need you to get me across. The toad, a powerful swimmer from Mount Myaboku, nodded and dove into the waves with Naruto on its back, expertly navigating the treacherous currents and whirlpools with its powerful chakra-infused limbs. Naruto landed on the shores of the main island, the former site of Uzushiogakur, the village hidden in the eddies. The site was one of profound, sorrowful ruin. Crumbling towers, choked with vines, reached towards the gray sky like skeletal fingers. The streets were silent, reclaimed by nature. The symbol of the Uzumaki clan, a proud spiral, was visible everywhere, etched into stone, faded but defiant. As an Uzumaki, Naruto felt a deep, strange connection to this place. It was a graveyard, but it was his graveyard. He could feel the echoes of his ancestors' chakra in the very air, a faint, sad hum of immense power long since faded. He spent hours scouting the ruins, his senses on high alert. The island was not empty. It was protected. Not by shinobi, but by the seals themselves. The air was thick with powerful barrier ninjutsu and complex genjutsu traps, designed to disorient and repel any who were not of Uzumaki blood. Naruto, however, could feel them. To him, the seals were not just traps, they were a language, one he instinctively understood. He could feel their structure, their purpose. He navigated the invisible maze with an ease that would have been impossible for anyone else. He found it at the island's center, at the heart of the ruined village. A massive, perfectly preserved temple, untouched by the decay that had claimed the rest of the city. It was protected by a shimmering, translucent barrier, a seal of such power and complexity that it made the air around it vibrate. This is it, Naruto whispered to himself. He returned to the mainland, using a Hiraishin kunai he had left behind, and led Itachi and Shisui across on Kosuke's back. When they stood before the temple's barrier, Itachi's Sharingan spun to life. He stared at the seal, his eyes tracing the intricate, swirling lines of chakra. This is magnificent, Itachi breathed, a note of pure academic awe in his voice. It's a multi-layered, self-repairing suppression seal, interwoven with a perpetual genjutsu and a spatial distortion field. It's not just a barrier, it's a work of art. I've never seen anything like it. It's unbreakable. Not for everyone, Naruto said. He stepped forward, ignoring Shisui's warning cry. He reached out and placed his hand on the shimmering barrier. He expected to be repelled, to be shocked, but instead, the barrier seemed to welcome him. The shimmering light intensified, turning a warm, golden color. The complex seal formula shifted, flowing towards his hand, recognizing his chakra, his bloodline. The barrier hummed, and then, a section of it dissolved, creating a perfect, arching doorway. It recognized him, Shisui said, stunned. It knows he's an Uzumaki. They stepped through the doorway into the temple. The air inside was still and silent, thick with the dust of ages. The walls were lined with shelves holding thousands of scrolls, the collected knowledge and history of the Uzumaki clan. In the center of the main chamber, on a simple stone pedestal, was a single, small, potted plant. It was a bonsai tree, but unlike any they had ever seen. Its leaves were a vibrant, golden color, and it pulsed with a gentle, warm light. The life force radiating from it was immense, pure, and overwhelmingly powerful. This is it, Itachi whispered, his analytical eyes wide. It's a chakra plant, a sacred Uzumaki artifact. It's been cultivated for centuries, fed with the pure life force of the clan's priestesses. Its cells contain the most potent regenerative properties imaginable. This was the cure. This was the miracle they had been searching for. As Naruto reached for the plant, a low growl echoed from the shadows of the temple. From behind the pillars emerged two massive figures. They were not human. They were constructs, golems made of stone and animated by sealing formulas, their bodies covered in glowing Uzumaki crests. They were the temple's final guardians. It seems our ancestors didn't like uninvited guests, Naruto said, a grim smile on his face. Itachi, stay back, Shisui commanded, drawing his tanto. We'll handle this. No, Naruto said, stepping in front of them. He looked at the two stone guardians, then back at his friends. This is my family's home. My family's fight. He didn't activate his Kyuubi chakra. He didn't need to. He slammed his hand on the ground, and the Uzumaki seals carved into the temple floor flared to life, responding to his will. Sealing art, adamantine sealing chains. Golden chains of pure, solidified chakra erupted from the floor, wrapping around the stone guardians, binding them completely. The constructs struggled, their immense strength useless against the ultimate sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto walked past the immobilized guardians and carefully picked up the glowing bonsai tree. He held in his hands the hope for his friend's life, a legacy from a clan he had never known. Before leaving, he quietly placed one of his Hiraishin kunai at the base of the empty pedestal. This was not a theft, it was a loan. He would return this precious piece of his heritage once its purpose was served. Let's go home, he said. Tsunade has work to do. The journey home was a blur of yellow light. Using the Hiraishin kunai he had left on the mainland, Naruto transported his team and their precious cargo away from the treacherous seas of the land of whirlpools in an instant. From there, they traveled with a speed born of desperation and hope, arriving back at the gates of Konoha in record time. They didn't stop at the Hokage Tower. They went directly to the hospital, to Tsunade's laboratory. They found her hunched over a microscope, surrounded by a mountain of scrolls and empty cups, her apprentice Sakura asleep in a chair in the corner, clearly exhausted from days of non-stop research. Naruto placed the glowing bonsai tree on the table. "We found it," he said simply. Tsunade looked up, her eyes bleary from lack of sleep. When she saw the plant, her exhaustion vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated scientific wonder. She gently touched one of its golden leaves, feeling the immense, pure life force thrumming within it. "By the gods," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "It's real. The life force. It's even more potent than the legends described." Her demeanor shifted instantly, the weary gambler replaced by the legendary Sannin, the world's greatest medical mind. "Right," she barked, suddenly full of energy. "Sakura, wake up. We have work to do. Shizune, clear the primary lab. I need a sterile field and every piece of chakra amplification equipment we have." The next 72 hours were a whirlwind of focused, high-level medical ninjutsu. Tsunade, with Sakura as her prodigal assistant, worked tirelessly. They carefully extracted a single golden leaf from the chakra plant. Using her legendary chakra control, Tsunade began the painstaking process of breaking down the leaf's cellular structure, isolating the pure Uzumaki life essence. She then began to craft a serum, a complex cocktail of regenerative compounds, cellular activators, and, at its core, the life essence from the plant. It was a jutsu of her own creation, a medical procedure so advanced it was rewriting the rules of what was possible. Finally, it was ready. A single syringe filled with a glowing, golden liquid. The hope for Itachi's life. They gathered in Itachi's hospital room. He was weaker now, the disease progressing, but his dark eyes were clear and calm as he looked at his friends. Minato and Fugaku stood in the corner, the Hokage and the Uchiha clan head united by their shared concern. "This is experimental," Tsunade warned, her voice grim. "I have no way of knowing how his body will react. The Uzumaki life force is designed to heal and restore, but when introduced to a foreign body, especially one saturated with the Mangekyo's unique chakra, the results could be catastrophic. I have faith in you, Tsunade-sama," Itachi said, his voice a quiet rasp. "And I have faith in my friends." With a steady hand, Tsunade administered the injection, pushing the golden serum directly into Itachi's chakra network. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Itachi's body arched in pain, a silent scream on his lips. The chakra around him exploded, a chaotic storm of red Mangekyo energy and the pure gold of the Uzumaki life force. The two forces clashed violently within him, a war being waged on a cellular level. "It's rejecting him," Shizune cried out in alarm. "No," Tsunade said, her eyes narrowed in intense concentration. "It's fighting. The Uzumaki cells are attacking the disease, rewriting the corrupted pathways." She looked at Sakura. "Get ready to assist. We need to stabilize his network." For an hour, the two greatest medical ninja of their respective generations worked in perfect sync, their hands glowing with green chakra as they guided the volatile energies within Itachi's body, helping the golden life force overwhelm the corrosive poison of the Mangekyo. Slowly, agonizingly, the chaotic storm of chakra began to subside. The violent red faded, consumed and purified by the gentle, persistent gold. Itachi's body relaxed, the tension leaving his frame. The pale, sickly pallor of his skin was replaced by a healthy, natural color. He took a deep, clear breath, the first one he had taken without pain in years. He slowly opened his eyes. They were still the dark, intelligent eyes of Itachi Uchiha, but the weariness, the deep-seated pain that had always lurked in their depths, was gone. He looked at his hands, clenching them into fists. He felt strong. Whole. "The disease is gone," Tsunade announced, a triumphant, exhausted grin on her face. "The Uzumaki cells have not just healed the damage, they've completely purged the Mangekyo's corrupting influence from his system. His body is rebuilding itself, stronger than before." A wave of overwhelming relief washed through the room. Shisui let out a sob, grabbing his best friend's shoulder. Fugaku Uchiha, the stoic clan leader, had tears streaming down his face. Minato placed a proud hand on his son's shoulder. Naruto looked at Itachi, at his brother, saved from the brink. He had faced down armies and tailed beasts, but this victory, this quiet triumph of friendship and hope against an unbeatable fate, felt like the most important one of his life. Itachi's recovery was swift and miraculous. The potent Uzumaki life force didn't just cure him, it revitalized him. The dark, weary shadows that had haunted his eyes for years vanished completely. His chakra, once a flickering flame, now burned with a calm, steady brilliance that was stronger than ever before. Tsunade, in her quest to save him, had inadvertently created something new, an Uchiha whose Mangekyo Sharingan was stabilized, its immense power no longer exacting a physical toll. The political ramifications within Konoha were immediate and profound. Fugaku Uchiha, in a public address to the clan, declared an eternal debt of gratitude to Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and, by extension, the Hokage. The act of saving their clan's greatest prodigy had done more to heal the rift between the Uchiha and the village leadership than decades of diplomacy ever could. The Uchiha, once a clan simmering with prideful resentment, now saw the Hokage's family not as rivals, but as honored allies. The internal strife that had plagued Konoha for generations was finally laid to rest. A week after Itachi was discharged from the hospital, Naruto stood alone in the ruins of the Uzumaki temple, the air still and silent. He carefully placed the glowing bonsai tree back on its stone pedestal. The golden chains binding the temple guardians dissolved into light, and the stone golems returned to their silent vigil. "Thank you," he whispered to the ghosts of his ancestors. He placed his hand on the pedestal, feeling the faint hum of his clan's chakra. With a final look at the legacy he was now a part of, he vanished in a yellow flash, leaving the temple to its eternal slumber. The Hiraishin kunai he had left behind disappeared with him. The loan had been repaid. Life settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. The world was quiet, held in check by the leaf's undeniable power. For 2 years, Naruto embraced this peace. He trained his team, molding Sasuke and Sakura into 2 of the most formidable chunin in the village. Their teamwork was legendary, a seamless blend of Sasuke's lightning-fast offense and Sakura's brilliant strategic and medical support. His relationship with Satsuki deepened, their shared training sessions and quiet moments at the Dengo shop becoming a cornerstone of his life. She was his confidant, the one person who saw past the legend of the second flash to the boy underneath. Their romance was a quiet, steady flame, a source of immense happiness for both of them and a symbol of the new unity within the village. Naruto himself, now 16, had grown into a young man who carried his power with a quiet, unassuming grace. He was tall and lean, his features having lost their boyish roundness, replaced by the sharp, handsome lines of his father. But his eyes remained his own, a deep, calm blue that held the wisdom of a veteran and the kindness of a true hero. It was on his 16th birthday that the peace was shattered. He was standing with his father on the Hokage monument, looking out at the village he loved. "You've grown into a fine man, Naruto," Minato said, a proud smile on his face. "You are everything your mother and I could have ever hoped for." "I had good teachers," Naruto replied, smiling back. As they stood there, a shadow flickered beside them. It was Itachi, his face grim. He held out a scroll, the seal on it indicating it was a top priority message from Jiraiya's spy network. Minato took the scroll, his smile vanishing as he read its contents. His face grew hard, his posture stiffening into that of a cage facing a crisis. "What is it, father?" Naruto asked, a sense of dread creeping over him. Minato looked up from the scroll, his blue eyes like chips of ice. "It's begun," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Iwa and Kumo. They've done it. They've gathered allies from the minor nations, and Suna has joined them. They've formed a grand coalition. They've launched a coordinated, full-scale invasion of the Land of Fire and our allies. The 5th Great Ninja War has started. The fragile peace, bought with power and maintained by fear, had finally broken. The resentment of the other nations had boiled over into a final, desperate gamble to topple the Leaf's supremacy." "What?" Naruto asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Suna too? But I don't understand. I defeated A. I showed them our strength was a shield, not a sword. Why would they do this now?" "Because you showed them our strength," Minato said grimly, his own strategic mind piecing together the terrifying logic. "Your victory didn't create respect, Naruto. It created absolute terror. They no longer see us as a rival nation, they see us as an existential threat, a force that can erase armies at will. They've used that fear to convince the world that our peace is just the prelude to conquest. This isn't a war of ambition. It's a war of fear." Naruto looked out at the peaceful village below, at the laughing children and bustling markets. He thought of his team, of Satsuki, of Itachi and Shisui. He thought of everything he had fought to protect. "No," Naruto said, his voice firm, resolute. "This is wrong. This is a war born from a misunderstanding. I won't let it happen." He turned to his father, his expression no longer that of a soldier waiting for orders, but of a leader forging his own path. "I'm going to Kumagakure." Minato stared at him. "Naruto, that's suicide. You'd be walking into the heart of the enemy's command." "I defeated the Raikage once," Naruto countered, his eyes blazing with a fierce conviction. "He listened to me then, when he was beaten and humiliated. I will make him listen to me now." I will not let my friends die in a war that started because they are afraid of me. I will speak with one way or another. He looked his father in the eye. Don't give me an army. Give me that mission. Minato stared at his son, the Hokage's authority warring with the terror of a father. Absolutely not, he said, his voice dangerously low. I will not sanction a suicide mission. You are the commander of the Northern Front. Your duty is here, leading our forces. My duty is to protect this village. Naruto countered, his voice ringing with a conviction that was absolute. And this war is happening because of me. Because of the power I represent. Sending an army to fight an army is what they expect. It will be a meat grinder that will bleed all our nations dry for years. But if I go, if I can make them understand, I can end this before it truly begins. This isn't a mission for a commander. It's a mission for a symbol. He's right, Minato, Itachi said quietly, stepping forward. The entire war room turned to look at him. The foundation of their alliance is fear. Specifically, fear of Naruto. He is the only one who can dismantle that foundation, not with force, but with his will. It is a tremendous risk, but the potential reward, a lasting peace without a generation of bloodshed, is greater. Minato looked from Itachi's calm, analytical gaze to his son's burning blue eyes. He saw the same impossible stubbornness, the same unshakable belief that had defined Kushina. He saw himself. He let out a long, slow breath, the weight of the world on his shoulders. This is the most reckless, insane, and insubordinate plan I have ever heard, Minato said, a faint, weary smile touching his lips. It's a mission only a fool would undertake. He walked to his desk and picked up a single, pristine Hiraishin kunai, one of his own personal markers. He held it out to Naruto. The fool has his mission, Minato said, officially sanctioning the impossible. This is an SSS-rank solo infiltration. Your objective, force a dialogue with the fourth Raikage. But you are still my son. He pressed the kunai into Naruto's hand. If you cannot succeed with words, if you are cornered with no other choice, throw this. I will be there. Do not die for nothing, Naruto. I won't, Naruto said, his voice thick with emotion as he accepted the kunai. Thank you, father. That night, Naruto prepared to depart. He stood at the village gate, shrouded in a simple travel cloak. Satsuki was there waiting for him, her face pale in the moonlight. You're really going, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I have too, he said simply. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She was a kunoichi of the Uchiha, and she understood duty. Instead, she reached up and gently touched the whisker marks on his cheek. You're not a symbol to me, Naruto, she said softly. You're just you. So come back. I promise, he said. He leaned in and gave her a quick, chaste kiss, a promise sealed in the quiet darkness. He turned to find Itachi and Shisui standing a short distance away. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They were his brothers. A simple nod passed between the three of them, a gesture of absolute trust and unwavering support. And then, Naruto was gone, a flicker in the night, heading for the heart of the enemy nation. The journey was a blur of speed and stealth. He moved through a world at war, seeing the columns of refugees, the smoke of burning border towns. It steeled his resolve. He used his Hiraishin sparingly, leaping between markers he had left on past missions, crossing hundreds of miles in an instant, a ghost moving through the chaos. He reached the towering mountains of the land of lightning. Kumagakure, the village hidden in the clouds, was a fortress, its natural defenses bolstered by thousands of shinobi on high alert. He couldn't just walk in. He found a secluded spot miles away and created a single, perfect shadow clone. He poured a massive amount of his chakra into it. Go, he ordered. Make a scene. The clone, radiating the power of a tailed beast, shot towards the village's southern gate. Alarms blared. Sensory ninja screamed warnings. It's the Jinchuriki. He's attacking the south gate. The bulk of Kumo's elite forces, including their sensory core, rushed to intercept the threat. It was the opening Naruto needed. While their attention was focused south, the real Naruto, his own chakra suppressed to a whisper, scaled the highest peak overlooking the village. He saw the Raikage's central tower, a massive structure at the village's heart. He took out one of his own Hiraishin kunai, spun it once, and threw it with all his might. It sailed through the air, a tiny, silent speck of steel, and embedded itself harmlessly in the tiled roof of the tower. He took a deep breath. And then he vanished. In his private office, the fourth Raikage, was listening to reports of the attack on the south gate. It's a clone, he snarled. A diversion. Find the real one. Find. His words were cut off by a flash of yellow light in the center of his office. Naruto appeared, standing calmly, his travel cloak falling away to reveal his Konoha Jonin vest. He was surrounded instantly by Ai's elite guards, their blades drawn. A himself stood, his body already crackling with lightning. How? A roared, his voice shaking with pure rage at the impossible intrusion. Naruto ignored the guards. He looked directly at the wreckage. I told you I would speak with you, he said, his voice echoing in the tense silence. But it seems you're a poor listener. A, blinded by fury, charged. I'll kill you. Naruto didn't move. Just as the wreckage's fist, a thunderbolt that could shatter mountains, was about to connect, Naruto vanished, reappearing by the office window. Ai's punch obliterated his own desk. You're angry, Naruto observed calmly. A roared again and attacked. What followed was not a fight. It was a lesson. Naruto used the Hiraishin kunai he had just thrown to the roof, and another he had silently dropped to the floor. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. He appeared behind A, then on the ceiling, then beside the guards. Ai's furious attacks hit nothing but air, destroying his own office. The guards couldn't even track his movements. He was a golden phantom, an untouchable god of speed. He never threw a punch, never formed a jutsu. He was simply demonstrating, with terrifying clarity, that he could have ended all their lives at any moment. After a full minute of this, Naruto appeared back in the center of the room, not a single hair out of place. A stood panting amidst the wreckage, his lightning armor sputtering, his rage finally giving way to a cold, dawning horror. Naruto had not come to fight. He had come to prove that a fight was pointless. Now, Naruto said, his blue eyes holding the weight of the war he was trying to stop. Are you ready to talk? A stared at the boy, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The rage was gone, replaced by the cold, hard reality of his utter defeat. The guards in the room remained frozen, their blades pointed at a boy who had just proven that steel and flesh were irrelevant to him. With a weary wave of his remaining hand, A dismissed them. Leave us, he commanded, his voice a low growl. But Raikage-sama. The captain of the guard protested, horrified at the thought of leaving his cage alone with this entity. I said, leave, A roared, a flicker of his old lightning crackling around him. The guards flinched and, with a final, terrified look at Naruto, bowed and retreated from the ruined office, sealing the doors behind them. They were alone. Talk? A repeated Naruto's question, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping his lips. He sank into the one remaining chair that wasn't splintered wood. You think this was my choice? You think I wanted this? He looked at Naruto, his eyes filled not with hatred, but with a deep, profound weariness. You don't understand politics, boy. You understand power. After Kaku Pass. After you humiliated me and my brother. My village was not just defeated. They were enraged. The council was simmering. They saw your mercy not as a sign of strength, but as the ultimate insult. The second flash of the leaf toying with us, then letting us crawl home with our tails between our legs. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. And Aniki. That damned old fence sitter. He saw his opportunity. He sent envoys, not just to my council, but to the minor nations, to Suna. He spread rumors. He painted a picture of a new Konoha, led by 2 yellow flashes, ready to conquer the world. He used your power, your legend, to stoke their fear. He told them that Kumo's humiliation was just the beginning, that they were next. Suna joined him? Naruto asked, the news still a shock. Even after what happened with Gaara? Especially because of what happened with Gaara, A countered. You didn't just defeat their weapon, you fixed it. You showed them that Konoha could not only match their power but could also control it better than they ever could. To them, that was the most terrifying thing of all. Aniki offered them a chance to be on the winning side, to reclaim their pride. He leaned back, the weight of his decision evident on his face. He built a grand coalition, all of them united by one thing, their absolute terror of you and your father. Then he came to me. He didn't offer an alliance, he gave me an ultimatum. Join them, or be the first to be crushed when they inevitably won. A looked Naruto directly in the eye, a question burning in his gaze. So you tell me, boy. What do you think would have happened if I had abstained? If, after our last humiliation, I had refused to join their crusade? My own people would have called me a coward. My council would have had me removed. Kumo would have been torn apart from the inside, and then crushed from the outside. This war. This decision. It was beyond me. It was a tidal wave, and I was given a choice, ride it, or drown. Naruto listened, his expression unreadable, as the wreckage laid bare the impossible political calculus that had forced his hand. The anger Naruto had felt on his journey here, the righteous fury of a hero ready to confront a warmonger, slowly dissolved, replaced by a heavy, grim understanding. This wasn't a war of simple good versus evil. It was a war born from a complex web of fear, pride, and history, a trap that had ensnared them all. He looked at the defeated Cage, at the man who had been his father's rival, and saw not an enemy, but another victim of the world's endless cycle of hatred. "So you chose to ride the wave," Naruto said, his voice quiet, not accusatory, but factual. "You chose to point the world's fear at my home, to sacrifice my village to save your own." "I chose to lead my people," A retorted, his voice a low growl. "A choice any Cage would make. A choice your own father would make." "No," Naruto said, and his voice was so firm, so absolute, that it made A flinch. "My father would have made a third choice." He took a step forward, his presence filling the ruined office not with power, but with an unshakable certainty. "You say you were given a choice to ride the wave or drown. But you forgot the third option. You can stand your ground, face the wave, and break it." "With what?" A scoffed. "Words? Pride? The ghosts of past heroes?" "With trust," Naruto said simply. "You saw our power and you were afraid. Aniki used that fear to build his army. But you never stopped to ask a simple question: what does Konoha want?" He leaned forward, his blue eyes boring into the rakeages. "We want peace. A real peace. Not the quiet before a storm, but a world where a Cage doesn't have to choose between war and political suicide. We want a world where our children don't have to become legends on the battlefield just to survive." He straightened up. "You were given an ultimatum. Now I will give you one. But mine comes with a way out." "I'm listening," A said, his curiosity piqued despite himself. "Withdraw your forces from the Land of Fire's border. Announce a temporary ceasefire, citing a need to reassess the strategic situation. It will buy us time and sow confusion in Aniki's ranks." Naruto laid out the first step. "And then what?" "Aniki will see it as a betrayal. He will turn his full might on me," A countered. "No, he won't," Naruto said. "Because his attention will be elsewhere." He took a deep breath. "I will go to Iwagakure. I will speak with Aniki myself." A stared at him as if he had just sprouted a second head. "You're insane. He'll kill you before you even reach his city." "Let him try," Naruto said with a confidence that was utterly terrifying. "While I have his attention, you will do something else. You will agree to a summit. Not with the coalition, but with Konoha. You and my father will meet in the Land of Iron, publicly. You will show the world that Kumo and Konoha are not on the brink of war, but are actively seeking a path to peace. You will shatter the foundation of fear that Aniki built his entire coalition on." It was an impossible plan. A reckless, audacious gambit that flew in the face of all political and military logic. But it was also a lifeline. A third choice. "Why?" A asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Why would you do this? After we declared war on you?" "Because my first S-rank mission was to a bridge in the Land of Waves," Naruto said, his voice softening slightly. "And there, I told a man that everyone deserves a home to fight for. I still believe that. Your home, my home. They shouldn't be at war because old men are too scared and too proud to talk." He held out his hand. "Not in threat, but in offering. I am giving you a choice, Raikage-sama. Not to ride the wave or drown. But to stand with me, and together, we will calm the storm." A looked at the boy's outstretched hand. He looked at the unwavering conviction in his blue eyes. He saw the ghost of his rival, Minato, but he also saw something new, a will for peace so strong it was a weapon in itself. He thought of the war, of the thousands who would die, of the endless cycle of hatred. And then he thought of this impossible, insane, third option. Slowly, hesitantly, he reached out with his one remaining hand and clasped Naruto's forearm. "You're a fool, brat," A said, a slow, weary grin spreading across his face. "An absolute, reckless fool." "I know," Naruto grinned back. "It runs in the family." The handshake was a treaty signed in the heart of a storm, a fragile pact forged from mutual desperation and a flicker of shared hope. The moment their hands parted, the weight of their impossible plan settled upon them. "This won't be easy," A grunted, his expression grim. "My commanders will think I've lost my mind. Aniki will see this as a declaration of betrayal. He will move against me." "He won't have time," Naruto said with confidence. "He'll be too busy worrying about me." He pulled out the Hiraishin kunai his father had given him. "I need to inform my father of the change in plans. He needs to prepare for the summit." Naruto channeled a small, precise pulse of chakra into the kunai seal. It was a pre-arranged signal, A simple mission accomplished ping that would let Minato know he was alive and successful. He then added a second, more complex pulse, a coded message indicating a drastic change in strategy and a request for a secure communication line. Back in Konoha's war room, Minato felt the first ping from his son's kunai, and a wave of relief so profound it almost buckled his knees washed over him. He's alive, he breathed. Then came the second pulse. His eyes narrowed. He's changed the plan. Inoiki, Minato commanded. I need a long-range psychic link. Now. In his ruined office in Kumagakure, Naruto closed his eyes. Father, can you hear me? Naruto. Minato's voice echoed in his mind, filled with a father's relief and Akage's urgency. Report. What have you done? Naruto quickly explained the situation, Ai's political trap, the fear-fueled coalition, and his audacious new plan. In the war room, the assembled commanders listened via Inoiki's telepathy, their faces a mixture of disbelief and awe. You're going to Iwagakure? Alone? Minato's mental voice was strained. Naruto, that is a death sentence. Aniki is a stubborn old fool who holds a deep grudge against me from the last war. He will not listen to reason. He doesn't have to listen to reason, Naruto sent back. He just has to listen to me. A is right. This war is built on their fear of us. I am the physical embodiment of that fear. I will walk into his village, stand before him, and show him that his fear is justified, but his conclusions are wrong. I will give him the same choice I gave A, peace through trust, or annihilation through war. There was a long pause on the other end of the link. Naruto could feel his father's internal struggle. Finally, Minato's voice returned, filled with a weary resignation and a deep, unwavering trust. The land of iron. In 1 week. I will meet the Raikage there. Do not get yourself killed before then, you reckless fool. I know, Naruto replied, a small smile on his face. It runs in the family. Over and out. The connection severed. The die was cast. A had already begun. He sent out a priority message to his field commanders, his voice booming with the authority of the Raikage. All Kumo forces are to cease offensive operations and assume defensive positions immediately. I am calling a temporary ceasefire to reassess the strategic situation. Any commander who defies this order will be executed for treason. The order sent shockwaves through the Kumo ranks. Daru, who was holding the line against Itachi's forces, received the message with stunned disbelief. A ceasefire? Now? What in the world is the Raikage thinking? The news reached the Tsuchikage's war camp within the hour. Aniki, floating in his tent, read the intercepted message, and his face contorted with rage. Betrayal. That muscle-headed fool has lost his nerve. After all our planning, he withdraws? His fury quickly turned to suspicion. No. This is not a retreat. This is a trick. What are you planning, Minato? While the world reeled from the sudden shift, Naruto was already moving. He left Kumagakure under the cover of darkness, a ghost vanishing into the mountains. His journey to the land of Earth was not a race, but a careful infiltration. He was now the most wanted man in the world, a triple S-ranked target walking willingly into the heart of the nation that wanted him dead more than any other. He moved through the rugged, mountainous terrain, his senses on high alert. He could feel the land itself bristling with Iwa's defenses. Earth-style sensory nets, hidden patrols, golem sentries. It was a fortress of a nation. But Naruto, with his own advanced sensory skills and the Hiraishin, was a key that could unlock any door. After 2 days of silent, tense travel, he stood on a peak overlooking the valley that housed Iwagakure, the village hidden in the stones. It was a stark, formidable city, carved directly into the mountains, a testament to the stubborn, unyielding nature of its people. He took a deep breath, the cold mountain air filling his lungs. He was here. He had made a promise to the Raikage. He had made a promise to his father. And he had made a promise to himself. He would not let this war happen. He pulled out one of his Hiraishin kunai. He didn't throw it. He simply held it, gathering his chakra, his resolve hardening into a diamond point. He was about to knock on the door of the most stubborn man in the world. And he planned to kick it down. Naruto didn't infiltrate Iwagakure. He declared his arrival. He stood on the highest peak overlooking the stone village, a solitary figure against the gray sky. He held a single Hiraishin kunai in his hand, and into its seal, he poured an immense, impossible amount of his own chakra, amplified by Kurama's. He wasn't preparing a jutsu. He was creating a beacon. A pillar of pure, golden chakra erupted from his position, soaring into the heavens, so bright it momentarily outshone the sun. It was a signal flare visible for 100 miles, a silent, arrogant roar that announced his presence to the entire nation. In the Tsuchikage's office, every sensory ninja in the village screamed at once. Cage level chakra signature. Appearing on peak 7. It's the Nine Tails. It's the Jinchuriki. He's alone. Aniki, the third Tsuchikage, nearly fell out of the air. He floated to his window and stared at the impossible pillar of golden light. The arrogance, he whispered, his old voice trembling with a mixture of fury and a deep, ancient fear. He walks into my village and announces himself like a visiting daimyo. This is Minato's boy. This is his answer. The village below erupted into organized chaos. Thousands of Iwa shinobi swarmed into the streets, their faces a mixture of anger and terror. They surrounded the base of the mountain, a sea of brown and red armor, but none dared to ascend. They were waiting for their cage. Naruto let the beacon flare for a full minute, a silent testament to his power and control. Then, he let it die, and the world seemed to fall into a sudden, heavy silence. He looked down at the army gathered below him. And then he vanished. He reappeared in a flash of yellow light, not in the mountains, not at the gate, but in the very center of Iwagakure's main plaza, standing atop the central monument. He had left Hiraishin markers all over the continent on his past missions, small, forgotten seeds that had now borne fruit. He was surrounded. An army of stone-hearted shinobi had him in their sights. Archers lined the rooftops, their bows drawn. Golems of earth and clay rose from the ground, their massive fists ready to crush him. From the crowd emerged two figures. A tall, beautiful woman with dark hair, the Tsuchikage's granddaughter, Kurotsuchi. And a large, boisterous man with red hair, Akatsuki. They were Aniki's personal bodyguards and two of the village's strongest jonin. Uzumaki Naruto, Kurotsuchi said, her voice sharp and confident, though her eyes betrayed her unease. You are either the bravest man in the world, or the most foolish. You are surrounded by 5,000 shinobi. Surrender now. Naruto simply smiled. I'm not here to fight you, Kurotsuchi-san. I'm here to speak with your grandfather. The Tsuchikage does not speak with warmongers and traitors, she spat. Doesn't he? Naruto's smile widened. He seemed happy enough to speak with the Raikage when they were planning to carve up the world together. The insult hit its mark. Kurotsuchi's face flushed with anger. But before she could give the order to attack, a wizened voice echoed from above. Enough. Aniki, the third Tsuchikage, floated down from the sky, his small, ancient frame belying the immense power he commanded. He hovered before Naruto, his expression a mask of cold fury. You have a great deal of nerve, boy, Aniki said, his voice like grinding stones. Coming into my village, after your father humiliated me in the last war, and after you shattered my alliance in this one. Give me one reason why I shouldn't turn you into dust right where you stand. Because you know you can't, Naruto replied, his voice calm and utterly devoid of fear. You could attack me. Your 5,000 shinobi could attack me. And I would vanish, leaving behind a field of your dead and a war you could no longer hope to win. You know this. That's why you're talking to me now instead of fighting. He took a step forward, meeting the old cage's gaze. I'm not my father, Aniki Dono. I'm not here to win a war. I'm here to prevent one. The Raikage has agreed to a summit. He has seen the path to peace. I am here to offer you the same choice. Peace? Aniki scoffed. Your peace is a boot on the neck of the world. You amass power, you breed monsters, and you call it security. You are a threat. Am I? Naruto asked quietly. He held up his hands, showing they were empty. I stand here, alone, surrounded by your entire army. I have not thrown a single punch. I have not formed a single jutsu. I came here to talk. Does that seem like the action of a conqueror? He looked past Aniki, at the thousands of shinobi watching them, at their fearful, angry faces. This war is built on a lie. The lie that Konoha wants to rule the world. The truth is, we just want to be left alone. We want to live in peace. But we will defend that peace with a power you cannot possibly comprehend if you force our hand. He looked back at Aniki. The Raikage has chosen to trust us. The Mizukage has chosen to trust us. The Kazekage is your ally, but his support is built on fear, not loyalty. You stand at a crossroads, Tsuchikage. You can continue down this path of war, a path that will lead to the destruction of your village and the deaths of thousands of your shinobi. Or, you can choose a new path. A path of dialogue. A path to a real, lasting peace. Naruto held out his hand, just as he had with the Raikage. The choice is yours. Annihilation, or conversation. Aniki stared at the boy, at the outstretched hand, at the impossible, audacious hope in his eyes. He saw the ghost of Minato, but he also saw something more. Something that terrified and intrigued him in equal measure. He saw the future. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled his old bones, that the future was standing right in front of him, offering him one last chance to be on the right side of history. Aniki stared at the outstretched hand for what felt like an eternity. The 5,000 shinobi of Iwagakure held their collective breath, their weapons ready, awaiting the single word from their cage that would decide the fate of their nation. The old Tsuchikage's mind, a repository of decades of war, pride, and bitterness, wrestled with itself. He saw the face of Minato Namikaze, the man who had single-handedly defeated his army in the last war. But superimposed over it, he saw the calm, unwavering eyes of the boy before him, a boy who wielded that same terrifying power not with arrogance, but with a heavy, solemn purpose. He did not take Naruto's hand. To do so would be too great a blow to his pride. Instead, the third Tsuchikage slowly, grudgingly, lowered himself to the ground. Kurotsuchi, Akatsuki, Aniki rasped, his voice weary. Stand down. Tell the men to lower their weapons. A wave of disbelief rippled through the Iwa forces, but the order was absolute. Slowly, reluctantly, weapons were lowered. The tension in the plaza lessened, replaced by a stunned confusion. You have made your point, brat, Aniki said, his gaze hard. You wish for a summit. You will have it. I will meet your father and the Raikage in the land of iron. But make no mistake, he added, his voice turning to steel, if this is a trick, if this is another one of your father's deceptions, I will personally turn Konoha into a crater so deep it will blot out the sky. I expect nothing less, Naruto replied, lowering his own hand. He had won. The war had been stopped. 1 week. With that, he vanished in a flash of yellow light, leaving the entire village of Iwagakure standing in stunned silence, their world upended not by an army, but by the will of a single boy. The 5-Cage summit held in the land of iron a week later was the most tense political gathering in a generation. The leaders of the 5 great nations met in a stark, neutral hall, flanked only by 2 of their most trusted bodyguards. For Konoha, Minato was accompanied by Itachi and Shisui. For Kumo, A was flanked by Daru and a kunoichi named C. For Iwa, Aniki had Kurotsuchi and Akatsuki. For the mist, Mei Terumi was accompanied by Zabuza and Haku. And for the sand, the 4th Kazekage, Raza, was guarded by 2 of his elite Anbu. The air was thick with hostility. This meeting is a farce. Aniki began, his voice shrill. We are here to discuss the Leaf's blatant military expansionism. Their peace is a lie. A lie? Mei Terumi countered, her voice calm but laced with venom. My village was bleeding under the heel of a tyrant. Konoha's power gave us our freedom. I see that not as expansionism, but as a noble act from a powerful ally. Your ally now holds a knife to the throat of the entire world. Aniki shrieked, slamming his small fists on the table with surprising force. 2 wielders of the Hiraishin, one of them a perfect Jinchuriki. A power that can erase armies. How are we to feel secure in the face of such a threat? Perhaps you should not have declared war on them, Mei suggested dryly. The argument devolved from there, a storm of accusations, old grudges, and political posturing. A remained silent, his single arm crossed with his phantom arm, his expression grim. He had made his choice, and now he had to watch the storm he helped create play out. Minato, too, remained silent, a calm center in the hurricane, letting them vent their fear and anger. It was Naruto, standing silently behind his father, who finally spoke. You are all afraid, he said, his voice quiet but cutting through the noise. Every eye in the room turned to him. You are afraid of what you don't understand. You see my power, and my father's power, and you see a weapon pointed at your heads. He looked at Raza. Kazekage Dono. You tried to turn your own son into a weapon. You failed. You saw me, another Jinchuriki, and you saw a perfect weapon. You joined this war not out of strength, but out of jealousy and fear of being left behind. He then turned to Aniki. Tsuchikage Dono. My father defeated you in the last war. Your pride has been festering for decades. You see me, and you see his ghost, a second chance for the world to humiliate you. You would sacrifice your entire village for the sake of your pride. Finally, he looked at A. Raikage Dono. You and I have already had this conversation. You chose to ride a wave of fear because you were afraid to stand against it. He stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over all of them. You are all acting like children, fighting over toys in a sandbox. You talk of domination, of security, of pride. But you have forgotten the people you are supposed to be protecting. The men and women who are dying right now on your borders because you are too afraid and too stubborn to trust one another. He took a deep breath. The world has changed. Threats like Orochimaru, like the collectors, they don't care about our borders or our villages. They prey on our division. We can continue down this path, fighting amongst ourselves until there is nothing left but dust and memories. Or we can choose a different path. He looked at his father, who gave him a subtle, encouraging nod. I propose a new allied shinobi forces, Naruto declared. Not a temporary alliance to fight a common foe, but a permanent institution. A united front, where the 5 great nations work together. We will share intelligence, conduct joint missions, and protect each other. Konoha's power will not be a threat to you, it will be a shield for all of us. We will create a peace so strong, so absolute, that no one will ever dare to threaten it again. The room was silent. The proposal was radical, unthinkable. It went against decades of ingrained mistrust and rivalry. But it was also a lifeline. A way out. A future. Minato stood up. My son speaks with my voice. Konoha pledges its strength to this new alliance. We will be the first to sign its charter. Mei smiled. The mist is proud to stand with the leaf. A looked at Aniki, then at Raza. He saw the conflict in their eyes. He stood. Kumo. We'll consider this proposal. It was not a yes. But it was not a no. It was a beginning. The 5th Great Ninja War ended not in a blaze of glory, but in a quiet room, with a radical idea proposed by a 16-year-old boy who had shown the world that the greatest power was not the ability to destroy, but the courage to build. The 5-Cage Summit did not end with a handshake. It ended with a tense, grudging understanding. Aniki, his pride still smarting, refused to join any formal alliance with the son of the man who had humiliated him. Raza of the Sand, ever the opportunist, saw which way the wind was blowing and agreed to a non-aggression pact, but nothing more. Honoring his agreement with Naruto, officially withdrew Kumo from the war coalition, but made it clear that this was a ceasefire, not a friendship. The 5th Great Ninja War was over, but a true peace had not been won. A fragile, resentful quiet settled over the shinobi world. It was a cold peace, a time of nations rebuilding their strength and watching each other with deep, abiding suspicion. Konoha was the undisputed superpower, but it was a lonely position at the top. 3 years passed. The world changed. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, now 19, was no longer just a prodigy, he was a pillar of the village. His name was a deterrent, his power a shield that kept the simmering tensions of the world from boiling over. He was a Jonin commander, a strategist whose insights were valued in the Hokage's war room, and a sensei who had forged Team 7 into one of the most formidable 3-man cells in Konoha's history. Sasuke, his Sharingan now fully matured, was a master of the Chidori in all its forms, his speed and power making him a true rival to his sensei. Sakura, under Tsunade's personal tutelage, had become a peerless medic nin and a terrifyingly subtle genjutsu specialist. Naruto's life found a rhythm. He balanced high-stakes missions with quiet evenings spent with Satsuki. Their relationship had become a source of quiet strength for him, a connection to a normal life that he cherished. Itachi Uchiha, his health fully restored, had become a symbol of the new era of unity within the Leaf. He was a celebrated Jonin commander, married to his childhood sweetheart, Izumi, and they were expecting their first child. The village saw in him the bright future of the Uchiha clan, a future intertwined with the will of the Leaf. But the piece was a beautiful, fragile glass sculpture, and one day, it shattered. It started subtly. Itachi began to suffer from bouts of exhaustion. He would cough, a dry, familiar rattle that sent a chill down Shisui's spine. Tsunade was called. Her initial diagnosis was optimistic, lingering effects from the disease, his body still adjusting. But his condition worsened. The official explanation, delivered by a grim-faced Tsunade to the Hokage and the Uchiha clan heads, was devastating. The cure, the miracle from the Uzumaki temple, had been a success. It had purged the disease from his system. But it had arrived too late. The years of cellular decay, the poison of the Mangekyo, had already taken their toll, irrevocably shortening his lifespan. The cure had not saved his life, it had merely bought him time. A few precious, happy years. Itachi faded quickly. He was confined to the hospital, then to his home, surrounded by his family. Shisui was a constant presence, his usual cheerfulness replaced by a quiet, desperate grief. Fugaku and Mikoto watched their brilliant son wither, their joy turned to ash. Izumi, her belly swollen with their unborn child, sat by his side, her hand never leaving his. Naruto visited every day. He would sit with his friend, his brother, and they would talk for hours, not about missions or the state of the world, but about simple things, the taste of dengo, the feeling of the sun on your face, the future of the village. The end came on a quiet, rainy afternoon. Itachi died peacefully in his sleep, holding his wife's hand. The village mourned. The funeral of Itachi Uchiha was the largest Konoha had seen in a generation. It was a somber affair, attended by every major figure in the village. Shisui stood like a stone statue, his face a mask of unbearable loss. Sasuke stood with his clan, his fists clenched, his face a storm of conflicting emotions, grief for the loss of a clan hero, and a renewed, burning drive to become strong enough to protect the people he cared about. Naruto stood beside his father, his expression unreadable. He delivered a simple, heartfelt eulogy, speaking of Itachi's loyalty, his wisdom, and his unwavering belief in the future of the Leaf. He was the picture of a grieving friend, a hero mourning a fallen comrade. Later that night, as Naruto stood alone atop the Hokage monument, looking out at the rain-slicked village, the mask of composure finally fell. Grief, raw and profound, washed over him. He thought of Itachi's quiet strength, his unwavering belief in peace, and the future he would never get to see with Izumi and their child. A cold, hard resolve settled in his heart, crystallizing his grief into a solemn vow. He would carry on Itachi's will. He would protect the peace his friend had died believing in, no matter the cost. The world believed that a great light had been extinguished. And in the heart of its greatest hero, that loss had forged a determination as unyielding as steel. The grief over Itachi's death left a scar on the heart of Konoha, a constant, aching reminder of the fragility of peace. Naruto, carrying the secret weight of his final promise to his friend, threw himself into his duties with a quiet, relentless intensity. He trained his team, took on missions, and stood as the stoic guardian of the village, his grief a hidden furnace fueling his resolve. 6 months after the funeral, the first tremor of a new storm shook the shinobi world. The two tails Jinchuriki, Yugito Ni of Kumagakure, vanished from her own village without a trace. There was no sign of a struggle, no witnesses. One day she was there, a pillar of Kumo's military might, the next, she was gone. The Raikage, was furious, but his investigation turned up nothing but dead ends. A month later, Roshi, the Jinchuriki of the Four Tails from Iwagakure, also disappeared. This time, there was evidence of a fight, a battlefield scoured by immense lava and fire jutsu. But Roshi was gone, and his opponents had left behind only a single, cryptic clue, a black cloak adorned with a red cloud. A new organization had emerged from the shadows. They called themselves the Akatsuki. Jiraiya's spy network worked overtime, gathering whispers and rumors. The Akatsuki were an enigma, a group of S-rank missing nin of terrifying power, their motives unknown but their methods brutally efficient. Their target, it soon became clear, was the tailed beasts. The news sent a wave of panic through the great nations. An organization powerful enough to capture two perfect Jinchuriki was a threat on a global scale. Minato convened an emergency council. They are hunting them in order, Minato said, his finger tracing a path on the world map in the war room. From the 2 tails to the 7 tails. Their ultimate goal is clear, they want the power of the Bijou. And eventually, Tsunade said grimly, they will come for the 8 tails, and then. For Naruto. We will not wait for them to come to us, Minato declared, his voice cold as steel. We will hunt them down. This Akatsuki is a threat to the entire world. I am forming a special task force to track and eliminate them. Naruto, you will lead it. Naruto, who had been standing silently, nodded. This was it. I will not go alone, he said, his voice firm. I will take my team. Naruto, this is too dangerous for them, Minato started to protest. Sasuke and Sakura are skilled jonin, but the Akatsuki are S-rank criminals. And we are Team 7, a new voice said from the doorway. Sasuke stood there, Sakura at his side, their expressions resolute. We will not let our sensei face this threat alone. Itachi-san's death taught us that we must be strong enough to protect the people we care about. We are ready. Minato looked at the 2 young shinobi, at the fierce loyalty in their eyes, and then at his son. He saw not a boy leading his friends into danger, but a commander with his trusted lieutenants. He sighed. Very well. Team 7 is officially assigned to the Akatsuki suppression mission. Their first lead came a week later. A sighting of a man in an Akatsuki cloak near the ruins of Uzushiogakure. The land of whirlpools? Naruto asked, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. Why there? We don't know, Minato said. But it's our only lead. Be careful, Naruto. We know nothing about this enemy's abilities. Team 7 traveled to the desolate islands. The air was heavy with the ghosts of Naruto's ancestors. As they approached the hidden temple, Naruto's senses flared. Someone was inside. They entered the temple, the great hall silent and dusty. Standing before the empty pedestal where the chakra plant had once sat was a single figure in an Akatsuki cloak. He wore an orange, spiral mask with a single eye hole. Well, the masked man said, his voice a cheerful, mocking baritone that seemed utterly out of place. If it isn't Konoha's famous hero, Naruto-kun. I was just admiring the architecture. The Uzumaki were such wonderful artists, don't you think? It's a shame you're the last of them. Who are you? Naruto demanded, stepping in front of his team protectively. You can call me Toby, the man said with a little wave. And I'm here for a little collection. He gestured to the empty pedestal. You've already taken what I came for. But no matter. I'll just take the container instead. In an instant, he was behind Naruto, his hand outstretched, reaching for Naruto's head. But Naruto was faster. He spun, a Rasengan already formed, slamming it into the spot where Toby had been. But his attack passed through the man as if he were a ghost. An interesting jutsu, Toby chuckled, his form solidifying again a few feet away. But mine is better. My jutsu makes me intangible. Untouchable. You can't hit what you can't touch. Sasuke and Sakura launched their own attacks. A Chidori spear and a barrage of senbon. Both passed harmlessly through the masked man. See? Useless, useless. Toby sang in his mocking tone. Naruto stood back, observing, his mind racing. Intangibility. Space-time ninjutsu. It was similar to his own Hiraishin, but different. A defensive, reactive version. You are powerful, Naruto-kun, Toby said, his tone suddenly shifting, losing its playful edge and becoming cold and serious. You are the greatest obstacle to our plan. And so, you must be the first to fall. The air around Toby seemed to warp, and Naruto felt a powerful suction pulling him towards the man's single eye hole. He's trying to pull me into his dimension. Naruto realized. He couldn't dodge it. He couldn't block it. But he could do one thing. He threw a Hiraishin kunai directly at the masked man's face. As expected, it passed right through him. But Naruto wasn't aiming for him. He was aiming for the wall behind him. Just as the suction was about to pull him in completely, Naruto vanished in a yellow flash, reappearing by the kunai on the far wall. Toby stood there, his head tilted. Oh? He said, a note of genuine surprise in his voice. The Hiraishin. How very nostalgic. It seems this will be more fun than I thought. He gave a final, mocking wave. Until we meet again, hero. And with a final swirl, he was gone, sucked into a vortex that vanished without a trace. Team 7 stood alone in the silent temple, the weight of their first encounter with the Akatsuki settling upon them. They had faced their new enemy, and they had come away with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear, the man called Toby was a threat on a level they had never encountered before, and this was only the beginning of a long, dark hunt. The silence in the Uzumaki temple was heavy and absolute. The cheerful, mocking voice of Toby echoed in their minds, a stark contrast to the sheer, overwhelming power he had displayed. Team 7 stood for a long moment, processing the encounter. What? What was that? Sakura asked, her voice barely a whisper. She, a master of genjutsu and a student of Tsunade, had been rendered completely irrelevant. Her attacks had been useless. A monster, Sasuke growled, his Sharingan still spinning as he replayed the brief, impossible fight. His ability to phase through our attacks. It's a perfect defense. No, Naruto said, his voice cutting through their shock. He was staring at the spot where Toby had vanished, his mind racing, analyzing every microsecond of the confrontation. Not perfect. There's a weakness. Sasuke and Sakura turned to him. It's a space-time jutsu, Naruto explained, his mind connecting the dots. Similar to my Hiraishin, but different. He's not teleporting. He's shifting parts of his body to another dimension to let attacks pass through him. But there's a flaw. He looked at his teammates, his blue eyes sharp with strategic clarity. When he tried to pull me into his dimension, he had to become solid. He has to be tangible to interact with anything. That's his weakness. The moment he attacks is the moment he is vulnerable. The understanding dawned on them. It was a minuscule window of opportunity, but it was there. The key wasn't to overpower him, but to outthink him. Let's go, Naruto said, his voice firm. We need to report this to my father immediately. They returned to Konoha, their mission a partial success. They hadn't found what Toby was looking for, but they had found Toby himself. In the Hokage's war room, Minato listened to their report with a deepening frown. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shisui were present, the village's inner circle gathered to analyze the new threat. A space-time jutsu that allows for intangibility, Minato murmured, his face grim. The only known users of such techniques are myself, Naruto, and the second Hokage. This Toby. It's impossible. Who is he? He knew about the Hiraishin, Naruto added. He called it nostalgic. That narrows it down to almost no one, Jiraiya said, stroking his chin. Anyone old enough to remember your legendary status and the war would be ancient by now. This changes the nature of the threat, Minato concluded. The Akatsuki are not just a random collection of S-rank criminals. They are led by a man with a powerful, unknown Kekkei Genkai or a long-lost jutsu, and their goal is the tailed beasts. This is a coordinated, global threat. Their strategy session was interrupted by an Anbu guard appearing in a swirl of leaves. Hokage-sama. An urgent report from the Fire Temple. What is it? Minato demanded. 2 Akatsuki members have attacked the temple. The Anbu reported. They overwhelmed the guardian monks. Their target appears to be the bounty on one of the head monks, Kairiku. They're fundraising, Tsunade spat with disgust. Like common mercenaries. But it gives us an opportunity, Naruto said, his eyes locking with his father's. We know where they are. We know their objective. Go, Minato ordered. Team 7, you will lead the intercept force. I'm also assigning Team 10 under Asuma Sarutobi as your support. This duo is unknown. We don't know their abilities. Do not underestimate them. Team 7 and Team 10 moved out immediately. They were a well-oiled machine, 2 of Konoha's finest teams working in concert. They arrived at the Fire Temple to a scene of destruction. The temple gates were smashed, and the courtyard was littered with the bodies of warrior monks. They found them at the main exchange station. One was a tall man with gray hair slicked back, wearing a strange mask and carrying a large briefcase. The other was a man with silver hair, a large 3-bladed scythe on his back, and a fanatical, bloodthirsty grin on his face. Well, look what we have here, the silver-haired man, Hidan, cackled. A welcoming party from the Leaf. More sacrifices for the great Lord Jashin. Just shut up and count the money, Hidan, the masked man, Kakuzu, grumbled, his voice a low rumble. This is business. This is as far as you go, Akatsuki, Naruto said, his team fanning out behind him. The Jinchuriki himself, Hidan laughed with glee. Lord Jashin has truly blessed me today. He charged, his scythe swinging wildly. Naruto met his charge, his movements fluid and controlled. He engaged Hidan in a taijutsu battle, easily dodging the wide, telegraph swings of the massive scythe. Asuma, Shikamaru, you're with me, Naruto commanded. Sasuke, Sakura, Choji, Ino, you have the other one. Isolate and analyze. The battle split into 2 fronts. Asuma and Shikamaru supported Naruto, using their blades and shadows to try and bind the seemingly insane Hidan. Meanwhile, Sasuke and Sakura led the attack on Kakuzu. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Sasuke unleashed a volley of fireballs. Kakuzu responded with a powerful wind style, pressure damage, a massive gust of wind that overpowered the fire and sent Team 10 scrambling for cover. He uses wind style, Sakura noted, her analytical mind already working. Choji, provide a distraction. Choji used his human boulder jutsu, rolling towards Kakuzu. The Akatsuki member simply sidestepped, his arm extending with strange black threads that pierced Choji's shoulder, sending him flying back. He has long-range capabilities, Sasuke observed, his Sharingan spinning. Ino, can you get in his head? I'm trying. Ino replied, her hands forming the seal for her mind transfer jutsu. But his mind is strange. It's like there's more than one consciousness in there. On the other side of the battlefield, Hidan was laughing maniacally. Naruto's shadow clone managed to land a Rasengan, blowing a massive hole in Hidan's chest. But the man just kept laughing, the wound stitching itself back together. Fools! I am immortal! He shrieked. All I need is a single drop of your blood. He managed to nick Asuma's cheek with his scythe. Hidan immediately leapt back, drew a circle on the ground with his own blood, and began his ritual. Asuma suddenly cried out in pain, clutching his arm as Hidan stabbed his own leg. A cursed jutsu, Sakura yelled from across the field, her medical knowledge instantly recognizing the principle. He's linking their bodies. Any damage he takes, Asuma-sensei takes too. The situation had turned dire. They were facing 2 S-rank shinobi with abilities that defied conventional logic, an immortal cultist with a deadly curse, and a monster who could use multiple elemental jutsu and had a strange, multifaceted mind. Shikamaru, analysis, Naruto commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. The curse. What's the weakness? Shikamaru, his brow furrowed in concentration, watched Hidan gloat inside his bloody circle. It's a ritual. He has to stay within the circle for the link to work. Troublesome, but simple. We have to force him out of it. Right, Naruto said. He looked at Asuma, who was gritting his teeth in pain. Asuma, buy us a moment. Asuma nodded, his hands flying through seals. Wind style, dust cloud technique. He spewed a massive cloud of ash and dust, temporarily blinding Hidan. It was the opening they needed. Shadow possession jutsu, success. Shikamaru's shadow shot out, latching onto the distracted Hidan. Got you, you zealot freak. Now, Naruto, Asuma yelled. Naruto didn't hesitate. He formed a Rasengan and charged, but he didn't aim for Hidan. He aimed for the ground at the edge of the circle. The Rasengan tore the earth apart, creating a deep trench that broke the ritual's boundary. The link shattered. Asuma let out a sigh of relief as the sympathetic pain vanished. What? No. Hidan shrieked, his immortality useless if he couldn't complete his ritual. It's over, Naruto said, his voice cold. He appeared behind Hidan in a yellow flash, a Hiraishin kunai having been planted there by a clone moments before. Before Hidan could even turn, Naruto's hand, glowing with concentrated wind chakra, chopped down. Wind style, blade of severing. It wasn't a flashy jutsu. It was a precise, surgical strike that sliced cleanly through Hidan's neck. His head flew from his shoulders. You think that can kill me? The head screamed as it hit the ground. I am immortal. I will curse you all. I know, Naruto said calmly. He created a dozen clones. But you can't do much without a body. The clones swarmed the still writhing body and the screaming head, binding them with sealing tags and burying the pieces deep underground in separate locations. The immortal was not killed, but he was permanently neutralized. Meanwhile, the battle against Kakuzu was reaching its climax. Sasuke's Sharingan had finally deciphered the mystery. He doesn't have one heart, Sasuke yelled to his team. He has 5. Each one is a different elemental affinity. Those black threads are his life force, and he has a masked monster for each heart. As he spoke, Kakuzu's back split open, and 4 grotesque masked creatures made of black threads emerged, one crackling with lightning, one spewing fire, one unleashing water, and one that had already been destroyed by Sasuke's Chidori. You are clever, Uchiha, Kakuzu rumbled. But cleverness will not save you from 4 S-rank jutsu at once. The 4 masked beasts unleashed a combined assault of fire, wind, and lightning that threatened to incinerate the entire area. Sakura. Now, Sasuke commanded. Sakura, who had been focusing her chakra, slammed her palms on the ground. Creation rebirth. It was the ultimate medical ninjutsu, a forbidden jutsu she had learned from Tsunade. A complex seal spread across her forehead as she released a massive amount of chakra, not to heal, but to create. The ground erupted, forming a massive, dense wall of earth that intercepted the combined elemental assault. The wall cracked and sizzled, but it held. It was the opening Naruto needed. Having finished with Hidan, he appeared on the battlefield in a golden flash, his Kyuubi chakra flaring to life. You have 5 hearts? Naruto's voice was a low growl, his aura a blazing sun. Let's see how they handle this. He held out his hand, and a screaming, 4-pointed shuriken of pure wind chakra formed. Wind style, Rasen shuriken. He didn't aim for Kakuzu. He threw it at the 3 remaining masked beasts. The jutsu exploded in a silent, violent dome of wind blades. The 3 elemental monsters were shredded on a cellular level, their threads and masks disintegrating into nothingness. Kakuzu stared in horror as 3 of his hearts were extinguished in an instant. All that was left was his own earth-style body. Monster, he gasped. Takes one to know one, Naruto replied. He appeared directly in front of Kakuzu, a standard Rasengan in his hand. He slammed it into the Akatsuki member's chest. The spiraling chakra tore through Kakuzu's earth spear defense, shattering his final heart and ending the century-long life of the Akatsuki's treasurer for good. The battle was over. The 2 teams stood amidst the wreckage, exhausted but victorious. They had faced 2 of the most dangerous members of the Akatsuki and had not just survived, but had utterly and completely dismantled them. The legend of Team 7, and its leader, had just grown even larger. The silence that descended upon the ruined courtyard of the fire temple was heavy with the scent of ozone, ash, and spent chakra. For a long moment, the 2 Konoha teams could only stand there, panting, taking in the scale of their victory. They had faced 2 S-rank, seemingly immortal monsters and had won, not just through overwhelming power, but through strategy, trust, and sacrifice. Asuma Sarutobi walked over to Naruto, a deep, newfound respect in his eyes. He looked at the spot where Hidan's head had been buried, then back at the young commander who had saved his life. Naruto, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I owe you my life. Your strategy, your command. It was flawless. We all did our part, Asuma-san, Naruto replied, giving a nod to Shikamaru. Shikamaru's analysis was the key. Without it, we would have been fighting blind. Shikamaru just shrugged, a tired look on his face. What a drag. Fighting crazy zealots is way too much work. But beneath his lazy demeanor, there was a quiet pride. His plan had worked. He had protected his sensei. On the other side of the courtyard, Sakura was already at work, her hands glowing with green chakra as she tended to Choji's injuries, her movement swift and sure. Sasuke stood guard, his Sharingan scanning the perimeter, his expression a mask of cold focus. He had witnessed Naruto's Rasen Shuriken firsthand, a jutsu of such destructive power it dwarfed even his own Chidori. The gap between them was still there, but now, it felt less like a rivalry and more like a mountain he was determined to climb. They returned to Konoha not as heroes returning from war, but as a grim procession of shinobi who had looked into the abyss and returned. They carried the bounty for Kairiku, the mission's official objective, but they also carried a new, heavy understanding of the enemy they faced. In the Hokage's office, the atmosphere was somber. Minato, Tsunade, and Jiraiya listened intently as Naruto and Shikamaru gave their report. Immortality through a religious ritual. Tsunade mused, her brow furrowed. And a man who functions as a living puppet master for his own hearts, each with a different elemental affinity. This is beyond any jutsu I have ever encountered. It's a perversion of nature. They are not just collecting tailed beasts, Minato said, his expression grim. They are collecting unique and forbidden jutsu. They are an archive of the shinobi world's darkest secrets. And they are led by Tobi, Naruto added. A man with a space-time jutsu that rivals my own. The pieces were coming together, forming a terrifying mosaic. The Akatsuki were not just a threat, they were a crisis on a scale that threatened the entire world order. Your teams performed exceptionally, Minato said, his gaze sweeping over Naruto, Asuma, and their students. You have dealt a significant blow to the Akatsuki. You have eliminated two of their most powerful members and proven that they are not invincible. This victory will send a message to the other villages. Konoha is not on the defensive. We are on the hunt. He stood up. Team 7, Team 10. You have more than earned your rest. Take a week. Recuperate. Train. But be ready. This fight is far from over. That evening, Team 7 sat at their usual booth at Ichiraku Ramen. The familiar taste of the warm broth was a comforting anchor after the chaos of the mission. He just wouldn't die, Sakura said, shaking her head at the memory of Hidan. And Kakuzu. 5 hearts. It's insane, Sasuke added, his voice low. They were strong, Naruto agreed, looking at his two teammates, his two friends. But we were stronger. Not because of any one jutsu, but because we fought together. We trusted each other. He looked at Sasuke. Your Sharingan's analysis was perfect. He looked at Sakura. Your quick thinking about the curse, and that earth wall. You saved us all. They had faced the worst the Akatsuki had to offer and had emerged victorious. Their bond, forged in the crucible of Naruto's relentless training and tempered in the fires of real combat, was now unbreakable. They were no longer just a sensei and his students. They were Team 7, a single, cohesive unit. And they were ready for whatever darkness the world threw at them next. The week of rest Minato had ordered was spent in quiet recuperation and analysis. They pored over the details of the fight, dissecting their own movements, their enemy's abilities, and the flawless coordination that had led to their victory. Before they were assigned their next mission, Naruto found a quiet moment to meet with Satsuki at their usual training ground. The setting sun cast long shadows as they sat on the grass, a comfortable silence between them. I heard about your mission, Satsuki said softly, breaking the silence. The whole village is talking about it. Are you all right? We're fine, Naruto said, his gaze distant. But the enemy? They're different. Not just strong, but wrong. Unnatural. Satsuki reached out and took his hand, her touch grounding him. Then you'll just have to be stronger. And smarter. She gave him a small, confident smile. And when you get back from whatever comes next, I'll have a new fire-style jutsu to show you that will blow yours out of the water. Naruto laughed, the tension leaving his shoulders. It's a date. This was his piece. This was what he fought for. The call came 2 days later. Jiraiya had a new lead. It's the Three Tails, Isabu, Jiraiya explained in the war room, pointing to a large lake situated in a neutral territory between the land of fire and the land of water. My sources say it has reappeared. It's not sealed in a Jinchuriki, it's roaming wild. It seems the previous host, the 4th Mizukage Yagura, died when you all dismantled his government, and the beast has finally reformed. A wild-tailed beast is an unpredictable, destructive force, Minato said grimly. And a prime target for the Akatsuki. Exactly, Jiraiya agreed. We have to get to it before they do. We need a team that can handle a tailed beast directly, but also has the sealing capabilities to contain it. All eyes in the room turned to Naruto. Team 7 will handle it, Minato said, his voice leaving no room for debate. Your mission is twofold. Primary objective, locate and seal the three tails into a containment scroll. Tsunade has prepared one that should hold it. Secondary objective, if the Akatsuki are present, engage and eliminate them. This is an S-rank mission. You leave at once. As they prepared to depart, Naruto took a moment to center himself, reaching into his mindscape. He found himself in the serene, sun-dappled forest, Kurama lying in the clearing, his massive eyes closed. Another one of your siblings is making a scene, Naruto sent to the fox. Kurama's eye cracked open, a flash of crimson annoyance. Isabu was always a timid fool, he grumbled. Letting himself get captured, then wandering around like a lost turtle. Pathetic. Don't expect me to help you babysit him. I wouldn't dream of it, Naruto replied with a mental smirk. I just thought you'd want a front row seat. Kurama just snorted and closed his eye again, but Naruto could feel a flicker of interest from his partner. Team 7 arrived at the massive lake to find the area shrouded in a thick, unnatural mist. This mist isn't normal, Sakura said, her sensory skills on high alert. It's saturated with chakra. They're already here, Sasuke confirmed, his Sharingan piercing through the fog. 2 of them. On the far side of the lake. Let's give them a warm welcome, Naruto said. They moved silently along the shoreline, using the mist as cover. They found the 2 Akatsuki members standing on a rocky outcrop. One was a young man with long blonde hair and a strange mouthpiece on one of his hands, which was currently chewing on a lump of clay. The other was not a man at all, but a massive, hunched puppet with a long, scorpion-like tail, a grotesque parody of a human form. This is taking too long, Sasori, my man, the blonde one, Deidara, whined. The beast is just swimming around. My art is meant to be explosive, instantaneous. Patience, Deidara, a gravelly, distorted voice replied from within the puppet, Sasori. Art is eternal beauty, something to be captured and preserved. The Jinchuriki is not present, which makes capturing the beast itself a delicate, surgical procedure. Surgical is boring. Art is an explosion. Deidara argued. It seems the Akatsuki has an internal debate on the nature of art, Sasuke whispered to his team. Let's give them a new subject to discuss, Naruto said. He created a single shadow clone and sent it out onto the water. The clone walked calmly across the lake's surface, directly towards the 2 Akatsuki members. Oh? A visitor? Deidara said, a manic grin spreading across his face. Finally, some action. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a piece of clay. His hand-mouth chewed it quickly and spat out a small, perfectly formed clay bird. Go on, little one. Give him a bang. The clay bird shot across the lake. As it neared the clone, Naruto, from his hidden position, made a single hand sign. The clone detonated. But it wasn't a normal clone dispersal. It was a flash of yellow light. Naruto had placed a Hiraishin seal on it. What? Deidara yelped. Before either of them could react, the real Naruto, along with Sasuke and Sakura, appeared in a flash on the rocky outcrop, surrounding them. Sorry to interrupt your debate, Naruto said, his voice calm and cold. But this beast is under the protection of Konoha. Your hunt is over. Sasori's puppet tail twitched, and Deidara's hands were already reaching for more clay. The 2 teams stood facing each other, the misty lake their arena, the rampaging 3 tails the prize. The battle was about to begin. Art is an explosion. Deidara cackled, his hands already molding new clay creations. And you 3 are my newest masterpiece. He tossed a handful of clay spiders onto the rocky outcrop, and they skittered towards Team 7 with terrifying speed. Sasuke, air support. Sakura, analyze his puppet, Naruto commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. The team moved as one, a testament to years of relentless training. Sasuke leapt into the air, his hands flying through seals. Fire style, dragon flame jutsu. A massive dragon of fire erupted from his mouth, incinerating the clay spiders before they could detonate. He didn't stop there. He landed on the lake's surface, his chakra control perfect, and his hand crackled to life. Chidori stream. An arc of pure lightning shot out, not at Deidara, but at the water, creating an electrified field that prevented any ground-based approach. Deidara just laughed, leaping onto a massive clay bird that had formed behind him, taking to the sky. You can't touch me up here, Uchiha. My art reigns supreme. While the sky became Sasuke's domain, Naruto faced Sasori on the ground. The puppet master didn't waste a moment. Hiruko's mouth opened, unleashing a torrent of thousands of poisoned senbon. Wind style, rotating gale wall. Naruto spun, creating a vortex of wind that deflected the deadly needles harmlessly into the lake. He created 20 shadow clones that swarmed the massive puppet from all angles. Fools, Sasori's distorted voice grumbled from within. Hiruko's armored shell proved too durable for the clone's taijutsu, and its massive scorpion tail swatted them away like flies. One clone, however, managed to get close enough to be grazed by the tail's poisoned tip before it dispersed. Got it, Sakura said from her position behind them. The information from the clone was instantly relayed to her. She pulled out a small medical kit, her hands already at work analyzing the complex toxin. This is a heavy metal-based neurotoxin, designed to paralyze in seconds. But it has a weakness. It's unstable. I can synthesize an antidote, but I'll need a minute. Buy her that minute, Naruto yelled. He formed a Rasengan and charged Hiruko head-on. The spiraling sphere of chakra slammed into the puppet's side, cracking its armored carapace but not breaking through completely. The force of the blow, however, sent the massive puppet stumbling back. Your brute force is artless, Sasori's voice echoed. The puppet's tail shot out, aiming to impale Naruto. Naruto vanished in a yellow flash, reappearing on a kunai he'd tossed moments before. And your puppet is too slow. Suddenly, the entire lake began to churn violently. A massive, spined head erupted from the water with a deafening roar. Isabu, the Three Tails, enraged by the battle raging in its territory, had finally intervened. It fixed its single, massive red eye on the combatants and unleashed a colossal wave. Scatter, Naruto yelled. The wave crashed over the outcrop, separating the combatants. Deidara soared higher on his clay bird, laughing maniacally at the chaos. Sasuke used his Chidori to anchor himself to the rock face. Sakura, grabbing the containment scroll, was forced back towards the shore. Naruto, however, used the wave to his advantage. He landed on the beast's massive, shelled back. Okay, Isabu, he thought, let's see if we can't work together. Sasori, having recovered, saw his opportunity. With Naruto occupied by the tailed beast, he turned his attention to Sakura, the medic he correctly identified as the team's support. Hiruko's tail shot towards her. But before it could connect, a blur of black lightning intercepted it. Sasuke's Chidori spear pierced through the puppet's tail, shattering the poison tip. You're not touching my teammate, he growled, his Sharingan blazing. Annoying Uchiha, Sasori grumbled. The cracked shell of Hiruko fell apart, revealing the true puppet within, a masterpiece of twisted genius, the puppet of the third Kazekage. Now, you will witness true, eternal art. The Kazekage puppet opened its mouth, and a swirling cloud of black dust poured out. Iron Sand, World Method. From the sky, Deidara saw his chance. The Jinchuriki is mine. C2 Dragon. He created a massive, flying dragon of explosive clay, which swooped down towards the distracted Naruto. Team 7 was now fighting a three-front war, Sasuke against the legendary Iron Sand, Sakura working frantically on the antidote while dodging stray attacks, and Naruto, standing on the back of a rampaging tailed beast, with a dragon made of bombs closing in on him. The situation had escalated from a difficult mission to a seemingly impossible one. Alright guys, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. As always, the rest of the story is already out over on Patreon, link to that will be in the description. Anyways, until next time, peace.